need to say all the witnesses here. Golly, can't freaking get out of here.
Try to extricate yourself.
Yeah. So we got.
Good luck. Don't fall. Don't hurt yourself.
If there's a fire, we may just need to leave Tim.
We get it. I don't know. He may climb over top of us. I think I might go rest of what time it is.
Okay, we're going to get going so that we can stay on time.
Am I sitting by Jonathan? I've got to sit by Jonathan today.
Oh, did we move around?
Because we're in a different room to make it even.
Okay. Well, I'm going to thank y'all for being here. We're going to get started so we can stay on time. We've learned that if we don't, it gets out of hand. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here. We've got a few housekeeping things. So this is our 4th day of hearings. We will be here all day today. We have another listening tour stop tomorrow night in Bentonville. And we will continue pretty much one a week, give or take, the listening tour stops, and we've been putting out those dates. We've got 6 more of those. We'll just continue on into June until we get those done. We only have one more scheduled hearing date, and that is next week. We've obviously been open to covering whatever topics we wanted to cover within the scope of our mission on a particular day, but we have tried to have a focus to the extent we can. And so today is testing. Next week we're going to have a panel, at least one panel, on data privacy. And we'll deal with that. And then we've sort of got a cleanup panel or 2. I think it's 2. And what I have tried to do is say yes to everyone who has requested, everyone on this council who has requested that someone be brought as a witness. I have tried to accommodate that. I think there's been only 1 or 2 or 3 instances. Anna Marie could speak to the facts on that better, but I think there's only been a few instances where we were not able to get a requested witness, someone requested by the council, and that usually related to just calendar, logistics, what have you. I have done everything that I could to get witnesses that people want to hear from. I get a lot of feedback from different people, and I just want to say thanks for all the input and all the positive comments. Anna Marie and Sarah from the governor's office, and Hannah and Kelsey and the council members, they've done a lot of work. Anna Marie has been focused on this almost full time. I would mention that because some people call and say, well, I wanted my client to testify, or I wanted to testify, and I don't feel like my voice is being heard. Well, that's nonsense. There's thousands of people around the state that would make great witnesses, and we just can't do that. Just can't. So I think that if you look at the number of witnesses that we've had, I don't see a lot of other task force bringing in as many witnesses as we have. We've been very aggressive, and we've been very open. So it's not personal. If there's a witness, if you wanted to testify and didn't get to testify, and I'm speaking to live stream and whoever's watching, but it's not personal. And if you want to, it's just part of the human condition. There's only so many hours in the day. If there's something that you want to submit that you think would be helpful to the council, then great. You can do that through our website. You can call my office. And I will make sure that we get that around. But I just want you to know, if you didn't get to be a witness and you wanted to, you're not alone. And that's, we're sorry about that. So on the last day, the two cleanup panels are not related to any particular subject matter. They're just folks that maybe one of them is an individual who was sick the first day of the hearings, and we just wanted to hear his voice, even though it sort of it was related to the first day. There's at least one or two business folks that council members have requested that we hear from, that have been very involved with Common Core. So that's what's going on next week. In terms of the recommendation to the governor, we'll get to work on that once all this fact gathering is over, and we want to get all the facts first. Are we forming opinions? Well, sure we are. But nothing final is going to be done until we get all of this taken care of. And I think that's important. The other thing I would say is, it's funny, people that love Common Core think we're hearing too much from people who don't love it, and people who don't love it think we're hearing too much from people who do love it. That's perfect. That's called balance. It's not quite balanced. It may surprise you but we've had, I think, far more, or definitely more witnesses who are pro than anti. But I have attempted to bring in minority voices. Some people have contacted me and been shocked that they had to hear from certain perspectives. They didn't put it that way, but I think that's what they were saying. We're hearing from everybody. And my job is to elevate some minority or unknown or lesser known, part of my job, viewpoints that need to be heard so that we can consider them, even if they're not the majority viewpoint. So that's part of my job. And some have taken that as indicating where I stand. I think if you had been in the room with the council members and me, you would know that it's hard to pin down exactly where any of us stand because we're processing a lot of this information. So I just wanted to say all of that as a start. Before we get going, does anybody have any housekeeping comments from the council? Okay.
I want to make sure that the mics from
Yeah.
live streaming.
Yeah, okay. When you talk, please push the little green button, and I'll be keeping a timer. 5 minutes, you're told 5 minutes? Okay. So all the witnesses will have 5-minute opening statements, and then we'll go around the council just like we always have. Before I start, I want to point out there is a really insightful back and forth, and I'll get this to the council if you're interested, but I wanted to mention this for the purposes of people watching. The Washington Post has a really good back and forth. It's a continuing series of letters between two award-winning school principals, one who likes the Common Core standards and the other who doesn't. And it's really, really insightful. I think both of them are from, one of them is from New York, and the other one is from Florida. One is pro, one is con, and they have alternated week to week, 4 against, 4 against, 4. They're both highly respected. It's a really good series. It's in the Washington Post. The most recent, the 7th letter was in the May 11th, so that's yesterday. And I have the whole series here, and it's really helpful. So if anybody on the council wants to read the back and forth there, you may find it helpful. And I just mentioned that for the live stream. Now, so today we're focus on testing. This panel will go to 11:30. Then we'll take a break. We'll have a second panel on that will continue what we're starting with this one, which is hearing from the testing companies. And then after, let's see, the last panel of the day will be also on testing, but it won't be the testing companies. It'll be educators and others who don't have a dog in the hunt in terms of the brand or the company. They'll just talk about testing in general. I'm looking here. Yeah, so this is about an hour and a half. We'll take a break, and then we'll do about an hour and a half again. So on this panel today, we have Laura Slover, Chief Executive Officer, Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers, PARCC. We have Scott Montgomery, Vice President of Policy, Advocacy, and Government Relations, ACT, and Canda Mueller, Dr. Canda Mueller, Vice President of Assessment, Design, and Psychometrics, Questar Assessment, Inc. Ms. Slover, if you want to start with your opening, and then we'll just go through the 3 5-minute openings, and then we'll open it up for questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Griffin, and thank you to the committee for inviting me today. It's a great pleasure to be here in Arkansas. My name is Laura Slover. I am a former high school English teacher, a former community college instructor, and perhaps most importantly, the mother of a first grader. So my background as a teacher and as a parent is the context for which I do this work. I am now the CEO of PARCC Inc., which is the organization, a nonprofit organization working with 11 PARCC states and the District of Columbia to help them develop and implement a next generation assessment system for Arkansas and for their states. Thank you for inviting me here today to talk to you a little bit about Arkansas's new aligned assessment. So why do I say it's Arkansas's aligned assessment? Arkansas has not purchased PARCC from PARCC Inc. or purchased it from an outside vendor. Arkansas is actually part of the group that came together 5 years ago to develop its own new assessments aligned to its new standards, and that they have been a decision maker from the beginning, directing the creation of an entirely new set of assessments that meets the needs of Arkansas's students, parents, and teachers. The involvement of Arkansas educators can be seen in all aspects of the test, and I'm going to quickly talk through those and then happy to take questions about that. Some examples of educators who've been involved: Helen Eaton, 4th grade teacher from Fayetteville; Jennifer Brown, who directs special education in the North Little Rock School District; and Angela Donner, who's a 5th grade teacher at the Marion School District. Countless educators and experts from across the states, including many in ADE, and Hope Allen is here today behind me, and Mike Hernandez, Tom Kimbrell, and now Commissioner Johnny Key, who form what's called the leadership arm of the organization and serve as the governing members of PARCC. And they've done that in many ways. First of all, right off from the beginning, the design. Choosing an evidence-centered design with the goal of informing instruction, helping teachers really understand where their kids are, and providing real information back through easy-to-use reports for teachers and families. Transparency. Arkansas has been leading the charge to make sure that the PARCC states together release a huge number of items so that the program is transparent. 40% of the items that students will be given this year will be released into the public domain over the next school year. Higher education. Arkansas higher education leaders have been at the table working to develop the content of the test, and now Southern Arkansas University just became one of the first institutions to be a PARCC pioneer, which essentially means that a student's score on the high school PARCC test will be used as a credential to open doors for them and place them directly into credit-bearing courses. They and institutions across Arkansas and other states will begin to accept those scores, proving the value of high school tests to high school students. Accommodations. Jared Hogue, who was formerly with the Arkansas School for the Deaf and now is with the Arkansas Department of Education, was instrumental in the development and implementations of accommodations for students who are deaf and hard of hearing. And there are multiple examples of how accommodations are built into the program, which I'm happy to talk about later. In your packet is a long list of educators from Arkansas who have been at the table reviewing items, thinking together about the content, and making sure the program is of the highest quality. And district leadership, too. Last week, I had the pleasure of participating in a meeting with Kelvin Gregg, the superintendent from Dumas, and Greg Murray from Conway, and a small group of educators and district leaders from across all of the PARCC states to get their feedback. How's it going? What can we do to improve? And where do you want to see your program go in the future? In your packet is also a document that describes the various roles in the consortium. I'm not going to go through that document page by page, but the point is to really underscore the level to which Arkansas is in charge and makes decisions about the Arkansas test. Arkansas is a member of the PARCC Consortium Governing Board. On that board are the chief state school officers from each of the PARCC states. So Commissioner Key now serves in that role. The commissioners of education have voted on every design and policy decision for the assessment Arkansas students are taking today. That means every major decision about the test has been made by them. It's not an off-the-shelf program that's being purchased. It is being developed literally by the states in charge. One important decision that Arkansas and other states have made is that student data, student information, is the exclusive property of each individual states. They don't share data across states. They certainly don't share data with PARCC Inc. And they have ultimate control about how that data and information is used to improve student learning and to make sure students are getting the support they need. Just a note about PARCC Inc. We're a nonprofit organization created to assist the states with the development of those assessments and to facilitate the work of educators that I've talked about through item review, professional development, et cetera. We also are charged with managing and overseeing the test vendor. Remember I said we're not the test vendor. Pearson is the group that is administering the PARCC assessment on the technology platform and through pencil and paper versions. And our job is to make sure they meet their deadlines, that they deliver a high quality product, and that we've involved states at every step along the way. So Arkansas does not buy the test from us. Arkansas and other PARCC states direct us to help you build your test.
I just wanted to remind you, that wasn't my alarm. That's the 5 minutes, sorry.
That wasn't.
It's a new
I
ring
appreciate that.
this week. It's a new ring this week.
May I
sorry.
make a couple other comments?
Sure. And
Thank you.
when the bell goes off, it doesn't mean you have to stop immediately. Just try to wrap it up so we can stay on time.
Thank you. I want to talk just briefly about the test itself. Currently, Arkansas is administering the test to 325,000 students. 5 million students across the PARCC states are taking the test as we speak, and the testing window will close the first week of June. So far, things have gone quite well, not without issue, and I'm happy to talk about that later. There's challenges anytime you roll out a new program, but overall, we've seen a technology platform that works well, coordination across states that works well. There are a couple components of the test that I think are really important to mention, and one is the emphasis on critical thinking, problem solving, and writing. Every student who takes PARCC will take a writing component. Now, why is that important? Writing is one of those things, along with reading and mathematical problem solving, that college faculty and employers say are critical for student success, not just in elementary and secondary school, but in post-secondary school and in good jobs. So the goal of PARCC is to help prepare kids for the world after high school, and we do that through making sure they get writing, reading, critical thinking, and problem solving. It's a very particular and well thought out design that the states led. It's now being implemented across the states, and we're learning a lot. One thing that you may have heard is that the PARCC Governing Board is considering changes to the design. Happy to talk about that later, but with the goal in mind of streamlining the experience for students, making it as easy for schools to administer as possible. There are changes being discussed to bring the two testing windows together, to make, to streamline the experience in schools, and to make it go more quickly so that classroom teachers can move kids in and out of the testing sessions more easily. The last thing I'd say is that it's been a significant cost savings to Arkansas to participate in a consortium, and in this consortium in particular. And there are a couple reasons for that. First of all, economies of scale. Anytime you are able to make the most of a partnership with other people, you can get best in class, certainly, and the content and the work that the states have done together to drive towards highest quality has really resulted in a program that's second to none, and it's one of the hallmarks of the work that I think that I and the state leaders are so proud of, is the quality. But they've also been able to get efficiencies and economies of scale through a large number of students, and by using computerized testing and delivering the test on technology, Arkansas has also been able to drive costs lower. And Arkansas is actually a leader in this regard. They have gone online quite significantly and been able to expand their technology access to kids and really make sure that the program gets off to a good start by using technology. They've been able to save over $3 million just through the technology aspect. I'm happy to take questions about any of the things I've mentioned, or anywhere the panel wishes to go. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Mr. Montgomery.
Senate Governor Griffin and members of the council, it's our pleasure to be here with you this morning and be able to speak to the issues of the Common Core, college and career readiness, and ACT's assessments of college and career. My name is Scott Montgomery. I'm the Vice President for Policy, Advocacy, and Government Relations at ACT. And before we get into the discussion and answer your questions, I want to talk a little bit about ACT, our mission, the work we do in support of Arkansas students already, as well as the work we do across the country to ensure that students are ready for post-secondary success. I, like Laura, am a former middle school teacher. I have 3 sons, a junior, an 8th grader, and a 5th grader, so it drives me and the work that we do. It becomes personal when you have children who are involved in the systems that we're designing. So it's good to be able to be here and speak with you this morning. ACT's mission since our founding 56 years ago has been to help individuals achieve education and workplace success. And we do that by working directly with states and districts to ensure that we best understand what your needs are for high-quality assessments. And those assessments are driven by over 50 years of research and information about what constitutes post-secondary success. Our research into college and career readiness predates the development of the Common Core, and in fact, it was ACT's data, along with our colleagues at Achieve and the College Board, who provided data and information to the Common Core State Standards Initiative. And we did that because we believe that anything that advances college and career readiness helps us move the needle on additional readiness for students post-high school. That's our mission, and that's what we believe. And so we believed in the effort and the movement, and we continue to think that college and career readiness for all students is important. It was also that research that inspired ACT to act to develop our own 3 through 10 assessment system that predates the completion of the Common Core and the launch of the 2 federally funded assessment consortia. ACT's partnered with the state of Arkansas since 1995, and in the last 20 years, we've delivered ACT Explore, Plan, and the ACT statewide for your students. In the past 5 years, we've helped over 130,000 Arkansas students and families prepare for life after high school. Last year, almost 27,000 high school graduates took the ACT. That's about 93% of your graduating class. 33,000 8th grade students took ACT Explore, and just over 23,000 took the 10th grade assessment ACT Plan. Of the students who took ACT last year, 91% of them aspired to post-secondary education, and 40% of them indicated an interest in a STEM career. Additionally, in the past 7 years, almost 50,000 individuals have earned a National Career Readiness Certificate through ACT's Work Keys that qualify them for over 13,000 unique jobs that we've profiled in our job database. And while all of that's impressive, and while those are nice numbers, there's still more work to be done, which is why we created ACT Aspire in the first place, to help parents, to help students, to help teachers better understand the readiness towards college and post-secondary education as early as possible, and to give educators the needed time to help keep students or get students on track for readiness. Already, ACT Aspire has administered over 3 million tests to students around the country in grades 3 through 10 in English, reading, math, science, and writing. And the assessments use a variety of item types and are designed to be delivered online. But we also know the capacity of districts and schools and technology, so it also includes a paper and pencil component. The system includes extremely robust reporting relative to student performance towards college and career readiness and the Common Core. It reports student proficiency as well as growth, and it includes a variety of unique reports that only ACT can offer, including a STEM score and an initial predictor of readiness beginning in high school, work readiness beginning in high school. And it lasts about half the time of the current assessments that most states are taking, about 4.5 hours on average. So it's our pleasure to be here. We're happy to talk about Aspire. We're happy to talk about the ACT. We're happy to talk about our work in the development of the Common Core, or anything else that you have on your minds today. And we're delighted to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you very much. Dr. Mueller?
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and thank you to the panel. It's good to be here. My name is Canda Mueller, and I'm a Vice President of Assessment Design and Psychometrics with Questar Assessment. We have been a partner to the Department of Education in Arkansas for 15 years now, almost 15 years, on assessing 3 through 8, math, ELA, science, end of course, math, ELA, science, and also in the alternate assessment, which is the assessment for students with severe cognitive disabilities. I want to talk with you a little bit today about assessment system designs and our philosophy of that. There's a lot of time on testing. I don't know if you all have read any of the news, but there's a lot of that. There's a lot of comments about that. It's vitally important that this time isn't perceived as wasted. We believe it's extremely important to bridge the gap between instruction and assessment. Teachers need to be able to get information back on what their kids know and can do during the year so that they can help them. Performance assessments need to be created so that the results of those are rich in providing what students know. The results need to be scaled across the year. I'm a psychometrician, so I'm going to use some weird words, and if they're too weird, please ask me. The results need to be scaled so that they can all be reported on the same level across the year, so that you know what a student knows at the beginning of the year to the end of the year and can measure that growth. Currently, there are some issues with the testing and the designs that are out there right now. We're thinking a lot about things like the time spent on testing, as I've mentioned already. The interim assessments, those assessments that are given during the year, tend to be optional, so you don't have clear comparisons across different districts, schools, across states. Those comparisons aren't there because you don't have anything that's clearly systematically given across. The innovation in the items can be limited due to constraints such as administration times, administration issues, the populations that are even being tested. So, where we are going with that and what Questar is doing and working with our partners on is thinking about considering spreading that summative testing across the year. We all think that it has to be at the end of the year by the very nature of the test. However, if you put in some performance-based assessments, you're actually building on the foundational pieces that the child is learning within the year. You're seeing where they're at. So you're taking the temperature and you're taking it systematically so that then you can go in and help that particular student grow and get to the place down the road that they need to be. We want to be sure that we are providing instructional information. It is paramount to success. So why shouldn't the assessments be providing it? We want to be sure that we are providing growth measures. We want to be able to show growth within the year as well as across years. Those are key pieces. Now, in terms of testing, there's something that's fundamental that underlies all tests. What's the purpose? What's the point? Why are you doing this? Why do you have this test? Well, we want to be sure that students are ready for college and career by the time they leave the school systems in Arkansas. For that to be the case, where do they have to be in 3rd grade? So how do you get from this place up here in 11th, 12th grade to 3rd grade? That's the part that has to be fully and clearly defined. Standards do part of that, but what really does that is clear definitions of the validity evidence that you want to collect on the assessment. Make sure that whatever test is given, that you know that the evidence you're going to get out of it is getting you further down the track of giving you confidence that a student knows what a student knows and can do by the end of their school years. So, standards, instructional, and the subset of those which are assessment standards are not the end-all be-all. The purpose is, the validity evidence is. Standards are actually just a way of getting there. They're a way of giving you bullet points that say, by this time, the student can do these things. It doesn't mean that's all they can do. It doesn't mean that there aren't additional things that they must be able to do. It just gives you a snapshot and a picture in time. It's something very key to remember. So our philosophy on designs is, let's think about the design first. Let's think about the purpose. Fundamental questions. Think about the purpose, get that defined. Your standards come next. Then you really are thinking about how to develop assessments so that you have something at the beginning of the year that serves as kind of a placement. So in the classroom as a teacher, you can say, oh, well, I know this is where this student needs help. This is where this student is far above others, whatever the case may be. Then performance assessments through the year, so that you can take some temperatures along the year. You take a temperature check and see where they are. Those performance assessments, if those items are developed correctly so that they are machine scoreable, or better yet, scored by the teachers, that's huge professional development for your teachers. They are digging in and finding out what their students know and can do. Are there security questions around the items and getting them loose and all those things? There are ways around that. You develop multiple items. You don't have all students take all the items. There are key ways to get around that. That's why you have people like psychometricians like me that help work out those details. Then at the end of the year, you're not spending weeks on testing. You're not trying to figure out how this class gets into the computer lab and, oh my gosh, the electricity went out and now we have to rearrange everything, because it's shorter. You're still going to have to get kids there. You're still going to have to assess them, but it's a shorter time that they're going to have to be there. It makes it a little easier to move all the pieces. So, this assessment has to fit within federal requirements. There are definitely requirements about accountability. There are definitely requirements that say, we want to be sure, Arkansas, that you are doing exactly what we believe you should be doing from the federal mandates that are provided. Validity is the key for that. The documentation and the very well thought out pieces that go into an assessment system, that's how you get through the federal requirements. There's nothing that says you can't do it this way. It's really about very clear, concise documentation, which is, again, why you have psychometricians. We're measurement specialists. We do lots and lots of writing. So that's something that you always want to consider. You want to be sure that those performance assessments are flexible so that you can give them during different times that are convenient for the districts. You want to be sure that your scoring rubrics and the professional development that can be gained by teachers by scoring these is strongly considered. It's up to the state how they want to go with that, but that is a key thing that can really support teachers. You want to be sure that the performance assessments are broad enough that a student really truly can show you what they know and what they can do. If you're giving them a test that is too narrow, they cannot show you all their skills. And if that is the case, then you actually aren't getting any closer to the end of the rainbow and that college and career readiness indication. You're not getting there because it's too narrow. So those are key pieces that must be thought about. You want to think about how this is going to be customized for your state, how you can work with a company, a vendor, your Department of Education, your teachers, all of these people, so that you don't have to conform to bumpers that are already given there for you. What can you do, and how can you create this? And that's what we do. That's what we're here to do as a vendor. So, thank you.
Thank you. I would just remind everybody, make sure the microphone's closed. There were some folks in the back who couldn't hear earlier, so just make sure you're speaking into the microphone. And we will start with Cindy and go around, 5 minutes each. Thank you.
Thank y'all for being here today. I'm an 8th grade teacher, and I've been giving the Explorer since its inception, and I was in charge of it in every school I've been in, so I know a lot about the Explorer, and I'm going to ask some questions about that in a minute. But I'm going to start with the PARCC assessment. I actually quizzed my 8th graders yesterday because they have finished testing on their general comments, and I wish I'd recorded it because they had some very incisive. But I'm going to start with one of their questions, and that is, what are y'all going to do with the surveys they answered?
I had the opportunity to be in an 8th grade classroom last week, so this is a very good timing for that question. I was able to sit with 8th grade students and ask them lots of questions and hear from them how they thought the assessment went, what they would do to improve it. It was great. We should discuss that. The survey comments will be used to do exactly what they were designed to do, which is to take student information and test administrator information about how the process went, to go back into the planning for next year, and to make changes to the test design and to the testing windows as necessary. So one of the things we heard, for example, was during the field test last year, when the test was field tested with a million students across the PARCC states, we heard that, and from students, that they needed a little more clarity about what button to push when they were done before they would move on to the next part, and how they could save their work and exit for the moment versus exiting forever because they're done with the entire test. And so with that feedback, we were able to actually have the test vendor go back and change the button configuration to make it much clearer which button to press. So that's an example of how student feedback was used directly to make changes to the assessment, even this first year.
Okay, so I've been to all of our listening tours, and our big thing is it takes too much time. It takes too many teachers out of the classroom, and of course, because of, I'm in a big district and we don't have enough technology to test all the students at once. It's taken a tremendous amount of time. Are y'all going to look at that situation, and how are you going to solve that?
Thanks for the question. States are right now looking at the information they have from this year's administration, looking ahead to next year, weighing the input from district leaders, from educators, from students to make decisions about testing time and testing windows. And they will come together next week to discuss the plans for next year. I think it's highly likely that the two windows, there's a window for the performance-based assessment that's a little bit earlier in the year, and the window for the end-of-year assessment that's going on right now. We believe those windows will merge. The state leaders will vote on that directly, so Commissioner Key will get to make that decision. But we are recommending that those windows be merged and that testing time be reduced by making some of the testing sessions more streamlined and clearer so that students can go in and out of the testing sessions more quickly.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask our ACT representative. I have heard a little bit about the Aspire, and correct me if I'm wrong, I understand that the sections are pretty much like the ACT, that it has the math, science, English, reading, and a writing component now. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and You said 4.5 hours, did you say, to administer the Aspire?
Depending on the grade level. It's roughly 4 hours, 3 through 6. It gets a little longer in middle school, and at the high school level in 10th grade, we're about 4.5 hours.
Has this been administered anywhere this year?
Yes. We've administered ACT Aspire across the country. Every state in the union has at least a school or district that's using ACT Aspire in one form or another. We're also using it statewide in Alabama and South Carolina for 3 through 10, and we're using the 9 or the 8 and the 10 grade levels in Wisconsin.
Okay, thank you. And let me see. Okay, and it would be a one-time test. It's not divided up?
It is modular, so you can split that 4 hours over the course of...
Right, but I mean, it's a one window, as she said. It is not more than one window for the testing.
So for the summative, yes, there is also a formative and a classroom component to that could be used throughout the year. But for the summative assessment, yes, it's a window of your choosing at the state level or at the district level when states want to, or districts want to test for ACT Aspire.
And would this give, I know with the Explore it gave indicators of how they might do on the ACT. Does this give indicators on that?
Yes, in fact, in the materials that we submitted, there are 2 score report samples that both tell you the student proficiency towards their college and career readiness at the grade level, as well as growth over time if they have taken the assessment for multiple years, and a predicted ACT score.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good morning to all of you. Thank you for being here. I'm Teresa Ketcher, and I'm an elementary school principal, educator of 31 years. I've been an administrator for 25 years, working in inner city, suburban, private, and neighborhood, magnet. I have a lot of different experiences, so I want to start with the PARCC testing company, or I guess it's a partnership. You mentioned something about the testing, between the beginning and the end. We did pilot this last year with the computer, and we had similar trouble, getting people in, what button to push, it didn't save, we had to start over, lost the information. I think our district wrote a waiver, and this year it's a large district, Little Rock School District, so we did the paper pencil. We did that in March. And then we did it again at the 1st of May. So really, those 2 types of assessment windows were right there together. I mean, we did it, and about 6 weeks later, we did it again. So, and then we're not going to get the results until next year. So that's really not going to help the teachers currently who are working with students, and by the time we get it, they will probably have already developed their own assessments for students that are coming into their class in August and September, and we call those pre-test, old school. But they do work, and they're teacher-made usually, and so they're formative assessments, which you all talk a lot about, that performance assessment. And so what I hear from teachers is that, we know how to give tests, and we know that there are good assessments. They're working with those children. So my question to you is about the funds. You said you're nonprofit, but you partner with the ADE or Pearson. What is the cost to our state to perform PARCC?
There are a couple questions in there. The cost to your state to contract directly with Pearson is not in my purview. So I know you'll be able to ask the Department of Ed that question. That is a contract that I don't have insight into. So you asked
as a
a couple of...
nonprofit, how much does it cost the nonprofit? How much do we pay the nonprofit?
Let me find that information. Each of the states is under contract to the nonprofit to help manage the project. And so I'm going to look for that information. I have it here in anticipation of being asked. One of the things you talked about was the performance assessment. And the PARCC performance assessments include writing and problem solving at every grade level. And so just going back to the previous question about testing time, I think it's an important factor when you think about testing time to think about what are the item types, what's actually being asked, how aligned is the content to the standards, the Arkansas standards. To really measure the Arkansas standards, you're going to need rich performance items. You're going to need writing. You're going to need to include mathematics problem solving. And those things mean that kids are going to spend time. You want to give kids enough time to give it their all, to show what they can do, and to not shortchange them on time. So there's a balance there, and I think Canda was really talking about that. You want to give students every opportunity to do rich, meaningful work, and not shortchange them on the time. That said, you want to make sure that they're not spending so much time testing that they're not, going to be able to do the other things that are important for them to do. Most of the testing done in classrooms across Arkansas and across the country is not end-of-year state mandated testing. It is local, teacher-developed, or interim or benchmark assessments, and where there's a lot of flexibility and choice that schools and districts have in terms of what they offer. So what the PARCC states have decided to do is not to mandate specific interim or benchmark tests, but to create and offer diagnostic assessments, speaking and listening assessments, formative tools that will be aligned to the content standards that Arkansas has developed, aligned to the end of the year test, so you can have a very tightly aligned system, which will allow districts to get rid of a lot of the other things that they're doing, the supplemental things they're doing that may or may not be aligned, may or may not be high quality, and may or may not have had teachers involved in their development. So I agree with you, teachers should be involved in developing assessments, and that is really the fundamental premise with which we have operated this work from the beginning. To answer your question, Arkansas's contract with PARCC Inc., my organization, is $284,000, $491, $284,491. And that is for their participation in governance, in our work in overseeing quality, in making sure Pearson and every other PARCC vendor delivers on time, that state leadership is always forefront, and that all of the educators in Arkansas and across the states come to the table to make these decisions weekly, monthly, quarterly, and that the test remains the highest quality product out there.
Okay, thank you. About the ACT, I'm just curious what the cost is for the state for the ACT.
For the ACT or for ACT Aspire? And I make the distinction because the Aspire is the 3 through 10 system. The ACT is our capstone in 11th grade, and there's a very different.
Let's go with the 3 through 5.
The 3 through 10. It depends on the number of students we test, but on average, the cost is somewhere between $18 to $22 per student for the online version, and there is I believe it's a $5 or $6 surcharge for paper and pencil because of the scoring that needs to be done.
Okay, thank you. And for Questar, if we were to use that, what would it cost per student?
Well, usually they don't let me talk about dollars because that's not my thing. But my colleague back here will probably shoot daggers at my head. It's about $22 a student.
The reason I ask this question is because we're in a time where the money is reduced more and more to the schools. Teachers spend their own money. They make minimum, in a time when they go to school and they have a college degree and a master's degree, and some even beyond that with doctorate. And they work very hard. The teachers work very hard. So how we spend our money for our schools is very important to the teachers. That's what I'm hearing from schools, and that we are good stewards and we choose wisely.
I would just add that, one of the benefits of being in the consortium and one of the value adds for Arkansas is the economies of scale across states. So when you reach a threshold of 7 million kids, the price per student will drop below $18 a kid. And that's for reading, math, and writing. And so as you think about cost, I would recommend that you make sure you're comparing apples to apples. Many companies are offering many products, but they're not all offering the same components. So you have to take a look at what's actually being offered. A lot of people will offer tests without writing, and the costs are being compared, but the value is quite different. A lot of companies will offer you tests, but have very different levels of score reporting and reports for kids. And we know that what gets in front of teachers and families really matters in terms of driving their education. So taking a look at those other components and what's really being offered matters.
I have one more question.
Okay.
When, we talk about the consortium of the states, we in Arkansas, we want our students to perform competitively with the nation. And so we want to be compared with the whole country and not just with the consortium of particular states. So how many states exactly are part of the PARCC assessment at this time?
At this time, there are 12 states, and they are some very diverse states, some very high achievers, some strivers, some small, some large. I'm going to read you the list. Massachusetts, Illinois, Colorado, Maryland, New Jersey, New Mexico, Rhode Island, Ohio, the District of Columbia, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Louisiana. So you can see there's some real differences in demographics and geography. What we'd like to do, and what the states are working on now, is to bring other partners in so that we're growing the number of states, but also really growing the number of students, and growing the number of higher education institutions that are part of the partnership that agree to accept the scores. Both PARCC and the other consortium, Smarter Balanced, have been including higher ed institutions and leaders and faculty from the beginning of this work. And now many of them across all of those partner states are saying, yes, we'll accept that PARCC credential as a door opener and a placement directly into credit-bearing courses. So it can serve not only as a tool for teachers and families to give them the information that they need through their K-12 experience, but also give them a target and an understanding that that matters and will be used by post-secondary faculty when they get to an institution. So it's a double value add.
And to attend college, the students have to take the ACT or the SAT.
Some colleges, but not all colleges, require that. And there's a growing number who don't. And so many colleges are going to accept PARCC as an indicator of readiness, not an admissions test, but a readiness for placement directly into credit-bearing courses, which means they don't have to take another placement test when they get to college. It means they're being identified early as a high achiever who's ready to go and may even be able to take a college course while still in high school, or alternatively, a kid who needs more help and a hand up so that they can be ready when they go on campus. So there's a lot of information flow through the PARCC system that can really help support kids and put them on that path to college and get them into a class when they get there, which is super important. Saves them money, saves them time, and sends clear messages to families about what's most important.
Thank you.
Kayla Davidson.
Thank you so much for being here. My name is Kayla Davidson. I'm a classroom teacher at Westside Middle School in Arkansas. You mentioned that, well, I know because I am a classroom teacher, there is a writing component for PARCC. Is there a writing component for the Aspire?
There is, actually, and it's included as part of the base package of ACT Aspire.
Okay, so with both of those, there would be that same kind of testing ability.
There is yeah, correct. There is a writing assessment in both of our assessments.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. After giving the PARCC test 3 times, once as a pilot and then twice in my own classroom this year, there have been several glitches and technical issues. Teachers in my district have voiced concern about, because we're dealing with all these issues, that the students get frustrated, then this might hinder their performance on the test because they're stopping and starting, stopping and starting. So what are your plans? I'm talking to Ms. Slover. What are your plans with PARCC to eliminate so many of these errors, the frequent stopping and resuming of the test in these issues due to technical difficulties?
Thanks for the question. You were a middle school teacher?
Yes.
I was a high school teacher. I miss it. Well, let me say that 5 million kids have now tested PARCC. In the early part of the year, the performance-based assessment, there were some technical glitches. At this point in where we are in the testing calendar, we're seeing far fewer technical glitches, far fewer customer support issues, which we track very carefully, and which the vendor reports out to us weekly. Largely, the issues that did exist in the beginning were not platform issues, just to be clear. The platform functioned quite well. They were technical glitches largely at the school level, password issues, sign-on issues, some issues where the filters had not been quite turned on and off right, so that they were fixable either through the building or through the district. And in many cases, the individual at the building would call the technical support center and they could work it out right there. Sometimes that had to be escalated. At this point, what we're seeing and what we found is that many of those glitches were sort of first-time glitches. The schools that had participated in the field test last year tended not to have those issues. Most of them, not all of them, but most of them were happening at schools for whom this was the first time administering. Now that we're in the second window, most of those issues have been ironed out. Administrators are more familiar with the platform. They've had more experience. And the technical support team has also been in place longer. So we're seeing fewer issues, more rapid resolution of those issues, and thinking ahead to next year, learning a lot from this first year and know exactly how to tweak, for example, the test administrator manual to give guidance directly within the text on a couple things that we've learned so that they don't even need to call the call center. So I'd say I'd give us a grade of vastly improved over the last month, and I'm really confident that most of the issues have been worked out.
Well, I know because I did do the pilot and I did do it, we were getting the same errors. They weren't password or username issues or anything like that. They were like they would get bogged down in the system, and so we actually had to call PARCC last week because we had so many technical issues. So I do hope that you get those ironed out, because I know we're going to have to use this test next year.
Absolutely. That must have been very frustrating. I was in an 8th grade classroom last week, and it largely went smoothly, but there was one student who had some problems, and we were quickly able to resolve them, and they had to do with some button that he was pushing that was kicking him out or making the computer slow down. But as soon as the test administrator was able to identify the problem, she was quickly able to step in. But it's very frustrating to be interrupted in a testing session, and so our job is to work with states to help identify those problems in advance, retrain as necessary, and fix any glitches that come up.
Thank you. Another question, my students did the survey at the end of the test, and she asked that question. I'm glad you answered that question about how those answers are going to be used, because I think that is important. My students verbalized to me, because, we cannot look at the test, and I did not look at the test, that the dual screen of the test was an issue, that it made it difficult for them because they were always having to scroll back and forth, and sometimes they would get confused about where and what to answer. Will you ever look at changing that format of the test to make it easier for the students?
Yes, for those of you who have not had an opportunity to see some of the sample items, I would encourage you to do that. Go online to see the sample items, and you'll see the screen where students are asked to write is a little small. It's not at the moment like going onto a Word document and having the whole screen in front of you, and that is something that we've heard, and we are working on that with the test vendor, and hopefully that will be a different look and feel for next year. I will say, while I'm talking about this, the importance of looking at items cannot be undersold. It is such an important way for you all, for parents, for families, for teachers to get familiar with the assessment and to see exactly what the big deal is. Why are we having this conversation? And when people look at items, and by the way, PARCC will be releasing significant numbers of items, 40% will be released for the sake of transparency and for the sake of bringing those items to families and to teachers. When you look at them, you see they're robust, they're rigorous, they measure the standards. They are the kinds of things that we wish our children would be able to do. That's the way we designed them. So I hope you'll all do that, and we'd be happy to come back, Lieutenant Governor, and do an item demonstration if that's of interest to the group.
Thank you.
morning. Thank you all for being here. I'm Sharice Dean. I'm a parent of 4 children. I have a second, a fourth, a seventh, and a 9th grader. And also, I homeschooled for 10 years, so hopefully I bring a different perspective. I have a couple of questions. The first one, I've heard a lot of the teachers here on the panel and also at the listening tour talk about, I think you mentioned the first year y'all did it on the computers. Some people have done it on computers. Some people have done the pencil and paper version. I believe you said that you all's day was so split up that some students had to take it in the morning, some students didn't get to take it until the evening. To me, that does not offer a level playing field for measuring data. So if you've got some people that are taking the test on the computer, some people are taking it on the paper, some are taking it early in the morning, some are taking it late in the evening when they're tired. Do you have something in place that will offer a way to level the playing field so that, how do you get accurate information from tests like that?
Was that directed to me?
It's directed to all 3.
Great. So let me say a little bit about the PARCC testing windows. So the states together as a group have defined the broad testing windows, and then districts and schools get to define within those windows when to schedule. So it's important that, that's a perfect example of where the states together create some broad policies, and then individual states have decision-making authority around how they're going to do it. So I imagine what's happened is that a district has decided to, within the broad PARCC testing window, to choose these 2 weeks, for example, and then give schools options about how they want to schedule it in their building. So the school that you're referring to has made a decision to schedule it that way. Another school might be scheduling all of them in the morning across the week. So there's some variation about that. What the states will do is take a look at all of the data that comes in, and see how kids did on all the items and give students scores, and then study the extent to which kids who took it earlier in the window did compared to kids who took it later in the window. I don't think we have the ability to look at morning versus afternoon, but we do have the ability to look at when in the overall window, timing-wise, calendar-wise, students took the test and whether that had an impact on scores.
And I'm sorry, I just want to say, I mentioned the early versus later because they didn't have enough, if I'm correct, you didn't have enough computers. That's been a huge issue. The schools don't have enough computers for all of the students, so they're having to split the days up. So that's why I brought that up.
Yeah, I would just add, we do the same thing that PARCC does. We have a defined set of testing windows. The state determines those, districts choose those, just as Laura had said. To your question about the difference between computer versus paper and pencil, we've done a variety of equating studies to make sure that what students take on the online version equates and is the same in terms of content and constructs and everything else being measured on the paper and pencil test. So I, too, can't speak to the time of day issue, whether it's morning or afternoon, but I can tell you that the content and the constructs measured on paper and pencil versus the online are the same. Do they get the same experience? They're not able to utilize some of the technology-enhanced items online versus paper and pencil, but the content and what we expect students to know and be able to do is the same on both paper and pencil and computer.
Thank you.
And I'll just throw my hat in. It's a very astute measurement question that you've asked. I appreciate that. So when you have really enhanced items that you're putting on computer, there are some challenges in translating those to paper. So that is something that always has to be checked. What happens, statisticians, people like me, look at that information to make sure that you truly are getting an accurate measure. It's the equating studies, as Scott mentioned. In terms of dividing up the day and having students, particularly if you have to do something where the same classroom of students has half in the morning and half in the afternoon, there's fatigue factors, obviously. But the flip of that is sometimes there are students who are night owls and are morning birds, and so that's something to take into account that can and cannot be taken into account. But as you're spreading this out over the year, you get a better measure because you're not having to cram everything in quite as much.
Okay. I have one more question, if that's okay. Okay, thank you. Canda, I remembered you mentioned you have testing that is geared toward students with disabilities. And I know there are, I think with both of you, they're testing issues for people who have hearing disabilities. What I wanted to know was with all three of you, what do you have in place for children with learning disabilities? How are we going to assess those children that have learning disabilities?
It's a very important thing in testing because we want to be as equal and as fair as we possibly can be. That's something inherent to the business. We don't want to do anything that is frustrating or unfair to students. So for students with disabilities, they receive accommodations. And they receive accommodations based on their individualized plan, their IEP. And that, whatever they're getting in the classroom, that should be what they're getting on the test. If you learn with something, that's what you are tested with. And so that's how that's addressed. For, I actually was referring to the severe cognitive disabilities. That's a different population altogether. And they're given a adjusted version of an assessment that is more appropriate for their accessibility needs.
I would answer that in the same way. We offer accommodations to students with hearing and sight and a variety of disabilities. Same holds true with the severe cognitive disabilities are in a different assessment system, but we can accommodate those students both with their local IEP and some state-allowed additional accommodations that we work with states on.
Okay.
Yes, PARCC has a number of features that are accessibility features, and then there are accommodations. And the difference between those two are that the accessibility features are available to all students. Students can go in and make their print larger if they want larger font, if they're more accustomed to that, like a large print. They can highlight or drag and drop. They can change the color of the font if it's easier for them to read. Any kid can do that. Then there are things that are accommodations that are specified through student IEPs. And there are accommodations for sight impaired kids. We've got Braille forms for hearing impaired. There's read aloud opportunities for kids. One of the really exciting things about taking a test on the computer, which I didn't quite realize until I saw it happening, is that there are accommodations that kids can have. You all could be taking a test right now on your computer. You all have headphones on, in part because you're listening to some of the items that might be technology-based, and they might be film or, little snippets of things off the website. But because of that, some of you could be having a read aloud accommodation, but none of you would know what the other person's accommodations are. Your kids aren't pulled out of the classroom. So it leaves kids with this dignity that is quite amazing and was something to watch. And one of the very, very anecdotal small pieces of feedback I got, it's not a big study, but it was from a kid who said, I really liked that I could take my test in the classroom, which for me as a parent, I thought, wow, that is pretty cool. The other thing I'd say, just more broadly, is that my agenda and the PARCC agenda is about equity, so this piece about accommodations is critical, giving all kids the opportunity to show what they know and can do on their path to college, to a job, to whatever their chosen path is. And the equity piece is not something that we talk about a lot with the technical side, but is an absolute priority for the state leaders who come together on a monthly basis to make decisions about this work.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Gartman. I'm a high school math teacher. I've administered the ACT many times and the ACTAP and every other whatever we've done over the years. And I have questions for each of you, please. Ms. Slover, what will the score reports look like for when we get the reports? And I understand they're not going to be here until November, which is not very useful to school districts, but I've also heard that that's maybe just this first year while you're setting the, whatever, to the levels where the scores are proficient, advanced, or however they're going to look, which I'm interested in also. Will you be able to separate students, the scores of students who took the pencil and paper version from the ones who took the computer version? For example, if this school district took pencil and paper and the next school district took computer version, will we be able to compare those scores and maybe tell what was caused by glitches in the computer or glitches in the technology versus not? And then also about the results. Coming in November, after this first year, how soon would you expect the scores to be returned? The one issue that I thought of just the other day is there's a new course our State Department has come up with called Math Ready for students who don't perform well enough on the Algebra 2 exam, so we want to offer them the Math Ready. Well, we won't have the scores back till November, so we're basing them on the PSAT, which is a 10th grade test. And then one other comment, or go ahead and answer those, please.
Thanks for the questions. Let me start with your question about the performance levels and the performance level setting. So PARCC will be developing 5 performance levels. The performance level descriptors, the things that describe the performance at each level, have been established. The PARCC Governing Board established those in 2012 so that there was a clear target, and they're based directly on the content standards. It was a very transparent process that included both K-12 leaders and the higher ed leaders to say, what are the 5 levels and what would it mean to be at a level 5 and a level 4? Now, once you have the student results, over the summer, the state leaders and educators from K-12 and higher ed will be meeting to do what's called the standard setting procedure, where they will be setting those performance levels and determining what are the threshold scores that determine a level 1, a level 2, a level 3, level 4, level 5. Now, why are we doing it now, you might ask? Why didn't we do that before? And there's a really good reason. We have a technical advisory committee that's made up of psychometricians like Canda from across the states who advised us early on in the process that you should really do that process with actual student results. So you're not guessing. You're not using field test data and having to make a lot of assumptions about how students really would perform, but you're using it with actual student data. It's fairer to kids and it's more meaningful in setting the score. So that process will happen this summer and be finalized in August, and then score reports will quickly be generated and will come out probably October, not November. I'll get you the exact schedule. As a follow-up, Lieutenant Governor, I'd like to submit the exact schedule for it. And that's for the first year only. And I hear you that is not ideal, because the whole premise of this program was to get results back as quickly as possible into the hands of teachers and families so they can make decisions about student learning and what they need to do over the summer and how to set up their classrooms for the next year. So in subsequent years, the states have worked together to define what is the latest that a score report can come back and still be useful to teacher planning over the summer. Actually, that's the conversation that will be happening at next week's meeting. And it's too early to know exactly what that will be, but the target, we're hearing June, July is the latest. Now then, what happens is the states get to say to their vendor, July 1, June 19, that's the latest, and then the vendor is charged with getting that back by the score reports back by that date. So I'd like to follow up on that question too after a couple more meetings over the next couple weeks, because I think by the end of the month we'll have a very clear answer to that question. The score reports are going to be actually quite interactive and colorful and have a lot of information on them and be available to online to people. So here are some of the things that will be included. They're actually really exciting, and it's been a big effort, not just on the technical side, but also on the engagement side, to talk to parents, to families, to teachers about what do they want to see on those score reports. So you'll be able to look at your students' scores and sub-scores in all of the variety of sub-levels of information in English language arts, for example, or math. It's not just a math score, but it's the major content broken out by sub-scores.
I had one more question. You mentioned that some of the colleges are accepting the PARCC scores for placement, but scholarships are still based on ACT scores and SAT scores, mainly ACT scores in Arkansas. So that's a little bit of an issue that they're still going to have to take the ACT because colleges still require that. And for Mr. Montgomery on the ACT, you mentioned 2 states who use ACT and Aspire, Alabama and South Carolina. How long have they been doing that?
So this is Alabama's second year of their administration, and South Carolina's first.
Okay, and are there sample Aspire items available?
Yes, if you go actaspireonline.com is actually the place where you will find a variety of our sample items. You can find, I don't know, there's I think several hundred in each of the subject areas, and you can look at them, you can download the item. You can actually even log in and be able to take the online technology enhanced version, some examples of what those look like across grade levels. So you can find all that at the ACT Aspire website, download it, play with it, engage with it, have fun with it, do what you want.
Don't have to have a password or anything.
The passwords are so in full transparency, the login and the passwords are right there on the website because we want everybody to be able to do it. There's no secrecy in this.
Okay. One more quick for Mrs. Mueller. I'm not familiar with Questar at all. Is it like the Learning Institute interim assessments, or is it?
Are you familiar with the benchmark assessments and the end-of-course assessments? We deliver those. We develop with Arkansas teachers. We develop and conduct content reviews with Arkansas teachers, data reviews with Arkansas teachers, and deliver those.
Is that the company who did the ACTAP?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Then I am familiar with you, and I didn't know it. Thank you.
We've been a little quiet for a few years.
I just didn't realize the name of the company was Questar. Thank you.
Oh, caught me. I really don't have a specific questions, but the issues that have been coming up repeatedly and that come up in my mind when I think about testing is the data needs to be effective to do the job that we need it to do and be valid. The test needs to be done in as least disruptive a manner as possible for both the students, the teachers, the school. It needs to be cost effective. Where districts, we have such a wide variety of district sizes, which most states do, and their economic levels of what they have to spend on maintenance of technology, on software. That's one concern I have with online testing. 2 years from now, the test going to change? Do we need new software updates? The costs that the schools are needing to put in to get enough computers just to do rounds of tests. The cost of the IT department to keep it, maintained, and it seems unfair to require that of schools that don't have that money just to get the data when that district could use paper and pencil. Even if the test, like you said, there was a $5 surcharge on the Aspire, even if the $5 surcharge, they're still backing off on that every year maintenance, because if it's maintenance on computer lab things that the students are using, the teachers can alter if there's a problem with the, alter the assignment. Okay, we're not going to do this online. We're going to do this by hand because there's issues in the computer lab. But if it's for testing, those computers have to stay top shape all the time. And that was another issue with rotating in and out of the computer labs. It's not just like our junior high did 7th grade one week, 8th grade the next week, but that's also a 2-window gap where no one can use the computer lab before school, after school, or for any assignments. So it disrupts the whole junior high, both grades, for that 2-week period. And it's going through the thought process of justifying what's justifying. I do like what you were saying about the through the year assessments. It's something for me to look into more and study more on how that, how that would look for Arkansas. But that's where my thinking is right now. Of making sure any any points in that you can address specifically for your companies or for PARCC.
So I'll start. I will say that I understand and I hear your concern about the upgrade and the upkeep and the numbers of computers. It's an issue I think we all deal with. I think the one thing that and I don't speak for anybody but myself, but I would imagine everybody else on this panel is probably the same. The wave of where assessment is going in this country is online. The state departments of education have been telling us that for years. We've been experimenting on the sides. We've been continuing to try and build out the capacity to deliver online because, as somebody mentioned earlier, the data that we can receive and data that we can provide back to teachers in a much more robust and quicker fashion is one of the reasons why online technology for testing is so attractive, and it's why the states have been the ones who've said we really want to continue to go that direction. To that point, though, we don't have the infrastructure in many of our schools. We don't have the technology. In some places, we don't even have the bandwidth and the pipe coming in to be able to deliver, the broadband into the classroom to be able to test. So I hear the concern. I think one of the things that we've done and most others have done is we make sure that we survey the schools and the districts and the states about the technology they're using in classrooms so that we aren't a generation or two ahead of where we need to be, so that when we deliver an assessment and when the system comes to your classroom or to your computer lab, it should work in 95% of those computer labs. We're not going to jump to the very next, Microsoft operating system and leave 3/4 of the school districts behind. That's one of the things that we have a responsibility to do in the industry, and what we do with our own assessments as well. 2 years from now, I will say that we probably will evolve where we are currently in our online development. I think we'll have much more robust items, much more ability to do some things that we can't do now. But just because we can do it doesn't mean we will do it if it means that the schools and the districts who are utilizing that assessment don't have the technology to develop it or don't have the technology to implement and put the test in place. So we'll continue to work with your state, continue to work with districts to make sure that what we think is cutting edge doesn't leave most of your students behind.
I would just add that many of the things that you stated at the beginning that were a must-have around validity and faster results and cost effectiveness, technology-based assessment offers you that. It offers innovative item types, the way Scott was discussing. It offers you much faster results. So the more quickly things can get scored, the faster they can get back into the hands of teachers and families. And it really will be cost effective. It's also much affordable over many, many kids to score and to report online. So there's some real reasons to do it, even though not everyone's ready now, to be ready for the future, because that's where not just assessment is going, but instruction is going, classrooms are going. And again, taking up the line of equity and access, we have to be providing that access to our students, or we're not serving them. And so I think it's not an assessment question, it's an instruction and schooling question about, are we going to step up as a nation and put technology in the hands of our kids? It is the civil rights issue of our time. And I think we're on the cusp, but we're not there yet.
We've been working on, with Arkansas for quite some time, on technology and getting ready and what that looks like. One of the things that is paramount to making sure that whatever you have, whatever dusty old computer you have in the back works, is to make sure that our testing delivery system works with those old computers. We get that. We understand that there are weird bandwidth problems and there's electricity problems and whatever the case may be. But it's really being thoughtful about the types of items that are created so that you are doing enhanced, robust measures. But perhaps you need to keep in mind that they need to be delivered on computer or on paper as well. And that's something that you have to work with and be thoughtful about when you're creating assessments.
Thank you. Good morning. Appreciate you being here. I have several questions. I'm going to try to stick within my 5 minutes, so here we go. First, a request. Could we get a sample report form, like an individual, what a parent would see? You can pick a grade, pick a 7th grade, and I'm speaking with the Aspire, and I would love to see one.
Absolutely.
Also,
we'd love to share those with you.
That would be great if we could get those for the panel. That'd be fantastic.
I would just call in the packet of materials that we sent to you. There are 2 slides in the deck that we sent that actually have a student parent, and a teacher report as a sample for you to look at. And I'm happy to answer questions about those if you'd like.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Montgomery, do you have data linking success on the ACT to the Aspire program?
So Aspire yes. So the ACT is our capstone. It has been for 50 plus years. We began with the content and the standards that were needed for college readiness that the ACT defines. We built over the last several years Explore and Plan 8th and 10th grade. And when we expanded into 3 through 10, we used that data of what constituted readiness in 8th, 10th, and then the 11th grade for college and career readiness to back map into 3 through 7 and say, what do students need? What's the learning progression in 3, 4, 5, 6 that we need to see in students to make that longitudinal trajectory towards 8th grade and then 10th grade and into the ACT. So that's an aligned system from 3 through 10, and then the ACT sits on top of it, and the data support that aligned system. You've had districts, maybe individual schools, using the Aspire system for, longer than Alabama and South Carolina. So we've had Explore and Plan, which are our 8th and 10th grade assessments that are being sunsetted because of the development of ACT Aspire. Schools and districts and states have used Explore and Plan for a number of years. There are a number of schools. There's actually 11 schools in Arkansas right now who are using ACT Aspire. I think that comes up to about 3,000 students in those schools. So yes, we've had those students taking Aspire in your state, but Aspire actually was launched 2 years ago at the statewide level and across the country in schools and districts. So you don't have the data yet to say that the students scored 2 points better if they on the ACT?
On the ACT, if they went through. Not yet, no. But our intent would be, in order at some point to be able to say, yes, if students if we're measuring the college and career readiness of students across that grade span, we would hope to see some improvement by the time that students reach, the 11th and 12th grade years. One of the, and I'm going to ask this to you, and then I'm going to ask a similar question, Ms. Slover. The results back from, the question really is about Common Core alignment. The results back from the ACT Aspire
per my understanding, will be at the domain range. Is that correct?
They'll be at the domain range, that's correct.
Okay.
Not at the standard level, that's
All
right.
right, and then Ms. Slover, the PARCC results, will those be at the standard level? Will a teacher be able to say at this specific standard, this child did this?
The results will be at the aggregate level, at the subscore level, which are the major content in the grade. So in math, it'll be different every year. It's actually an important point. Currently, or in previous assessments, scores in math were reported about with the same subscores: algebra, geometry, number, data. In some states, they did problem solving, but they were the same in every grade level. But that's not actually what the Common Core and what the Arkansas standards require. The Arkansas standards require that you go in depth in certain grades on a content area focus, and then you let it go the next year and you do something slightly different. So rather than have lockstep kind of preordained, predetermined reporting categories, those will shift from grade to grade as the content focus and emphasis shifts. So they'll be different, in other words, than what teachers are currently used to. So there's a lot of work that we're doing with communicating about the score reports. And there will be also information in English language arts. There'll be subscores as well.
Okay. A lot of the discussion, both in this panel and, or in this committee and around the state, has been just testing logistics and turnaround time. Ms. Slover, you said we're going to combine the windows, or that may be part of an ADE decision, but could you cut the testing time in half?
So by combining the windows,
I'm putting you on the spot, aren't I?
by combining the windows, you're going to reduce a lot of the administration time, which is mostly what we hear about in terms of the concerns. If you're asking a question, so significantly reducing the test footprint, the answer is yes. If you're asking about specific student testing time, like how much time a student is on task, I would say yes, the goal is to cut that as well, but not to cut it in half. I think we want to try to focus on streamlining the school experience so that what's happening is the most important thing, is students engaging with content.
Right, agreed. When you say combined windows, does that mean, are we going to have both EOY and PBA, or?
So currently, the design is PBA first and then end of year. And more importantly, the performance-based, I mean, really, when you think about it, it's the performance-based items come earlier. The performance-based are writing multi-step math problems where the problem builds and you actually need time to think through the multiple steps. And the end of year, which are quicker response, still require thinking and critical thinking and constructing an answer, but are faster and scored via computer. So those were separated out for good reason, and it's just important to remind people that writing is going to be hand scored. And so that means human beings will be scoring that writing. And so that takes extra time. And if you have dual goals of really deeply measuring the content and getting your score reports back quickly, you don't want to move that writing performance assessment too late in the year, because that will push your score reporting back later in the summer. So the idea is, however, to bring the two windows together in order to reduce the amount of administration time and to streamline in a building. And thereby, you can't bring it so close to the end of the year that you don't get the results back until the late summer, but you don't want it to be too early, because you really want to have your content coverage before you put kids in front of an assessment. You want to have made sure they've had an opportunity to see all the content. So we're looking at those windows, and the states will be deciding what the window will be. They will merge the two components. It is highly likely that those will be merged, and that the states will formally decide to do that with the goal of reducing overall administration time and reducing somewhat the student testing time, and making the sessions uniform. One of the pieces we've heard from building administrators is it's a little tricky to schedule when session times are 60 minutes or 70 minutes, and in a few cases 75 minutes, that it just makes scheduling a little bit tricky. So evening those out so every session is the same time will also help with scheduling.
Right, and part of the question is what to do with all the other kids while this group's testing. But I'm over my time, but real quick, Mr. Montgomery, on the Aspire system, if the test is given in, second week of May, it's given May 10th, when will the results be in?
So our goal is to have those results back to you within 30 days. Generally, right now, I think we're running ahead of that. I think schools are receiving theirs in about 20 days, some shorter than that. But we are able to turn that around relatively quickly, especially those students who go through the online experience. Our writing is also scored by hand, so that slows down part of the process. We one day hope that AI scoring becomes a place where we can utilize it to increase even more the turnaround time. But right now, we shoot for 30, and we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 right now. So if you took it on the 10th, you'd have it by Memorial Day.
Okay, thank you very much. Jason, can I have some of your time? No? No?
The clock hasn't really stopped anybody and hasn't really, so it's not going to stop me either. Yeah, no, I'm kidding. It never stops you. All right. Want to just make a few points here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but LSAT, the law school exam, MCAT, medical, PSAT, SAT, ACT, all of those are written, correct?
Taken.
Written, paper and pencil.
Taken.
I took it a long time ago. I'm asking the question.
You mean online
Any of
versus
those
pencil
online?
and paper?
Are any of those online?
The SAT and PSAT are not online now.
ACT is not.
ACT is.
We are
Currently.
The ACT is not currently. We are currently piloting about 5,000 students who are taking it online.
So the answer is,
I think the GRE is online, but I don't know about the LSAT.
okay. Bottom line is a lot of tests, nationally recognized tests, are not online. I do think that a lot of the complaints that we've heard has revolved around the computers. And people say, well, we need, computers, removing the computers. I love computers, totally for computers. If you want to test kids on computers, you have a test on computers. I think the practical reality, as the father of a second grader who's been taking all these tests, is, and we got a waiver, right, for paper and pencil, that logistically a lot of the problems are related to the computers. And it is not confidence inspiring that this was not foreseen. The idea that you now have to have a meeting to decide that 2 windows was not a good idea makes me think I should have been on the panel, because I would have asked some teachers and they would have told you this is not going to work. So that's not confidence inspiring. The other thing I would say is, so let me ask you, Ms. Slover, the maximum number of states that you got up to in terms of members was 26, is that correct?
That is not correct.
What's the number?
23.
Okay, 23. And you're now at 12, is that correct?
12.
Okay, so you were at 23, you're now at 12. If you were a stock, we would all be selling.
Or you'd be buying.
Well, no, not with what just happened in Mississippi and New Jersey. But here's do we have a situation where we're going to wake up and we're going to be comparing with other states, and that's going to mean Mississippi or one other state? I mean, is there a trend? Has it stabilized? And a very short answer, please, because I got a bunch more to get to, and I am actually going to try to stay within my time.
All of the states that are in and are very committed states. The states that were that dropped out early were in for a short period of time to observe. They were participating states. In some cases, they were governing states, but for political reasons needed to drop out.
So that's stabilized?
It has stabilized to the extent that politics ever stabilizes. And
so it's not stabilized.
Well, with any, if this were a content-only endeavor,
yeah,
I would say it's very stable.
Okay.
We've got a great product and a very good administration, but I can't, I don't have a crystal ball on the politics.
Okay. The other thing that we've heard a lot about, and getting back to the computers, is that, well, we need technology anyway, right? and we were just talking about this. Yes, you need every student using a computer at some point, just like you need every student being in the gym for PE. But you don't need all 1,000 in the gym at the same time. So there may, in some cases, be a disconnect between the number of computers needed at one time for this test versus the number of computers a school normally needs, right? So, because to give this test, you need to give it all at once, that will be the only time that every kid needs their own computer at their own desk at the same time. So it creates a false infrastructure need that is not only is the initial cost of the computer, but as we've heard testimony, is the maintenance cost. It's software, it's whatever. And so you hear people say, well, you're a troglodyte, you know, we need computers for every kid. Well, not at the same time, right? I mean, what's that? Well, it's biased. In any event, so, and this is not just for you, but I think this raises a question. You can be for computers and for students using computers, but that doesn't mean all 1,000 kids in a school need their own computer at the same time, at the same day. That's like saying everybody, all 1,000 kids are going to go in the gym and do PE at once. Well, that wouldn't make any sense. Well, you don't have to buy into the everybody gets a computer thing to be pro-computer. They're two different deals. And that's why I think that's a false choice. And I think we need to think a little more about that, because a lot of the problems associated with your test that I've heard about from teachers are logistical problems, many of which are related to computers in some capacity, whether it be computers shutting down or not having enough computers. Now, some of it's related to personnel, proctors, people to manage the taking of the test. We're going to hear about that on the third panel today. So I just raised that. I don't have a definite answer on that, but I think we need to talk about that as a council. Because the idea that if you're somehow for a paper and pencil, that you're somehow back in the number, as my mother would say, that's just not true. You have one of the best schools in the state, and you were doing paper and pencil. Got a waiver, it sounds like. Let's see. So with regard to PARCC and money, so the 200-something thousand, that's sort of a membership fee for the consortium. That's not the cost, obviously. What would be really helpful to me, and it doesn't sound like necessarily we can get this information from you, and I may need to talk to Dr. Jones, but I'd like to have a price tag. What does yours cost? What does yours cost? You know, we're at Best Buy, right? We're shopping for computers or whatever. What does yours cost? What does yours cost? I'd like to know. Cost is not necessarily the primary factor. It's not dispositive in and of itself, but it's certainly important. And we need to know that. And I know that it's millions. It's not hundreds of thousands. I know that. But if we could get some info on that. And I don't know if ADE has it for ACT. You do? Okay. But we may need to.
We've done that for a number of states. Lieutenant Governor, would be happy to do it for you all and provide an estimate of what it would be for your students in the state of Arkansas.
Do you have okay, that'd be great. Do you have a relationship with Pearson?
Yes.
Okay. Can you explain that relationship?
Sure. Pearson is, we actually have.
Is there anybody that doesn't have a relationship with Pearson? Okay, good. Okay.
Pearson and ACT both have Iowa City offices. Our roots come out of the University of Iowa. We've been in Iowa City for a number of years together. We've partnered with Pearson to score many of our reports, and actually they score a good number of our ACT writing and some of the other components of the ACT for us. In terms of ACT Aspire, we formed a joint venture with Pearson to.
So that's a Pearson test as well?
So it is ACT's assessment, it's ACT's intellectual property, it's ACT's brand on the assessment and the development of that assessment. We're using Pearson's technology to deliver ACT Aspire, which is where the partnership comes into play. We're not a technology company, we fully admit that, but we partnered with Pearson to make the delivery and utilizing their platform. So that's where the partnership comes into play.
Okay, so it's just the technology component, not the substance of the test. Is that?
We may use them to validate some of the development of the items, but the vast majority of the development comes from ACT developers.
Okay. Now, with regard to the PARCC consortium, so, and we talked about this a little bit when I first met with you. Arkansas can't make changes. Arkansas can propose changes, which are then voted on, and you have to win that vote, correct?
There are a number of things that are determined together as a consortium that the states determine together, and there are a number of things that Arkansas determines on its own. Testing windows, for example, PARCC determines the broad window for test security purposes, what is the beginning and the end, and Arkansas determines when its window is, and then it lets schools choose when specifically to schedule. So that's a broad example. PARCC states together are going to determine these threshold scores, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Arkansas gets to decide how it uses them, whether it uses them, whether it uses them for accountability purposes or not. So there's a great amount of state choice. Really, the places where they come together as states is around test design and administration tools. But all of the state policy issue and state timing issue and state use issues are for Arkansas to determine on its own.
And one more question, Dr. Mueller, is your company, tell us how many states you're working with on statewide exams that would be comparable to PARCC and ACT. What's the status right now? How many states, what's going on?
We are engaged in assessments in about 15 states right now, and we're working very, very closely to ramp up a couple of others with designing and developing items
individually
in the states with the teachers.
So that's not a off the shelf.
No, it's not off the shelf. It's custom.
Like these. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I would just beg to differ about the off-the-shelf part of your comment, with all due respect. What the consortium has been doing for 5 years is building a program that they have put their blood, sweat, and tears into, and that is customized based on their design specifications and their reviews. So they may have come out with a product that is the same in Arkansas as it is in Massachusetts, but it's been designed to be that way. There's no other product out there like that. It is a custom test co-designed by the people who are going to deliver it. So you get the benefit of the best thinkers, the high quality, the really great partnership around the content, but then you get to customize your own use and your own accountability use systems and your own decision-making about how to administer the program. So it's actually the best of both worlds.
Yeah. It's the same for all those states is the point. That's the point. Hers is individual for each state.
That's correct.
And that's the point I was making. You mentioned that a couple of, some schools here are giving your test. Maybe that's an ADE question, but do they have to get a waiver to not give the part? Or what's going on with that?
No, so there are a number of districts and number of schools around the country who choose to give additional assessments.
Oh, additional. Okay, it would be an addition.
This is an addition that they've decided, and most of those, I believe, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I believe most of those are private schools who may be outside of your system.
I got you.
Thank you for coming and lots of information for us all.
I come from a small district. I last week went and watched third grade math testing. I know that we were in the pilot and it was a mess. It has gotten better, but I would hope it would get better. It has improved. One class was doing fine, got on, everybody got on, was testing. Second class, 5 kids, can't get on. Everybody's sitting around. It's 10:30, getting close to lunch. It put those kids 30 minutes farther behind, which means 30 minutes farther behind for lunch. And it is a scheduling nightmare. We're a small school. We have a certain amount of bandwidth. So nobody in East Lab can do anything because we're testing everything in, junior high. So it really is tough when you go from computers. It is. I understand. The paper and pencil kids are familiar with. They're easy. Electricity went out on Monday, no testing on Monday. Now we're pushing everything back. It is a logistical problem. My question mainly is on, we'll go back to the special needs and the children who need accommodations. And you said the literacy, they get a reading accommodation. Well, out of 1,250 children in our school, only 5 got the literacy reading accommodation. We have a lot of special needs. I need to know how each test, do you have a test that lessens the content to fit these children, or are they still taking the same test at the same level? And if you're doing that, how are you testing their ability to do better, because you're not going down far enough to see what they can do if you're testing them on a higher level, is what I'm asking. Are there any tests out there to help, and what are the accommodations for these children?
Thank you for the question. There were 2 parts of that question. One was around the technology.
Correct.
And, I've heard that people feel worried about the technology burden. I don't think that's a PARCC-specific question. It's an assessment question about how are we assessing our kids. And I think that the states, when they came together originally 5 years ago, felt a little worried about it. Are we going to be ready? Are our schools going to be ready? But many of the states invested considerably. And what we found was that whereas we thought maybe 50% of students would be taking the test online, states actually were readier than they thought, and 75% of the kids across the states took it online. Now, it was even greater in Arkansas, where there was considerable effort. You all are on the leading edge of this, and that doesn't mean it went perfectly everywhere, but it means that you've taken this seriously and really invested in it and invested in your kids. So it is not perfect, but I'm glad to hear that you think it's getting better, and I think when you look ahead, and Scott mentioned this, that is where assessment is going. It's where classroom instruction is going, and that means you're on the cutting edge of that, and you're ready. It won't be perfect, but you'll get there quickly, more quickly than perhaps in other states. On the accommodation side, I talked about the equity piece and how there's a read-aloud accommodation. Now, PARCC, the consortium doesn't decide which kids get that. Your school would decide that based on IEPs and stuff. So I can't speak directly to that, but it is really designed not to be for kids who just have a hard time reading. It is designed to be for kids who, through their education, individualized education plan, need that accommodation because they have a disability around decoding. And I think that we're in the beginning of really, and I think states through this effort have realized that they had very different policies around that. And so having states think through how they utilize that accommodation and how schools identify which kids get that accommodation, that there's still work to do in that area. In regards to what you're talking about students who are below grade level, for example, the PARCC diagnostic tools and the formative tools are the perfect tools for a teacher who has kids at varying levels, because they are not a one-size-fits-all measure. If you're a teacher and you know that these 5 kids are struggling with fractions, but these 5 kids are a grade level ahead, you can customize the assessment for those kids and get the information that you need about the kids in real time about where they are today. So it's a very versatile tool that can help identify kids and support kids who are below, performing below grade level and above grade level. I'd love to do a deeper dive with you if you're interested. The PARCC summative assessment, just like any other summative assessment that is part of the, the federal accountability, what you've got to do to meet your ESEA requirement, is a grade level assessment. So whether it's PARCC or another tool, at the end of the year, every state is required to give a grade level assessment that is on the content in that grade. So for the Arkansas test, the Arkansas standards at grade 3 would be assessed at the end of the year. But throughout the school year, a teacher would have a lot of opportunity to go below or above through these diagnostic tools.
I would add, I would add the same thing, right? I think one of the pieces you asked was, can the test be shortened? And from an accountability and from an end-of-the-year summative for you to report to the federal government, the answer to that would be no, we can't. Do we offer accommodations? Sure, read aloud, extended time, variety of different options are available. Again, based upon the student's individual IEP and what the districts will allow and what the districts will support. So in terms of creating a separate test that would be shorter, that would be a challenge, I think, to your own accountability system. Now, along the same lines, from the formative and interim tests that we have at the classroom level, those are perfect tools for teachers to be able to assess students throughout the year, but they wouldn't be able to be used at the end of the year for accountability purposes, but they would give a teacher understanding of where a student was at any particular time relative to those standards.
So as a testing company, in your opinion, what would be a better test for a special needs child? One that the rest of the kids are taking, or one that better suits where they're mapping out and how they're gaining?
So I want to make sure that we're clearly explaining. When you build an assessment, you build it to provide maximum information for the entire group of students who are taking the test. That means that you have items of less difficulty, of lower difficulty, and of higher difficulty. What Questar does and what we're suggesting isn't add-ons. We're not adding on additional diagnostics. We're suggesting the entire assessment system needs to be put together to inform what your students know and can do. That means that you have to have the accommodations and accessibility inherent to what the student is doing in the classroom as well as on the test. Provide performance assessments throughout the year that are part of this system. That way the students can show what they can do, not on these really high-level big things, but what can this student do that makes this test accessible to them? How can we show what they can do? It's key. So that's how we approach it at Questar. It's that across the year, making sure that we know along the way, as well as having that summative piece that has items of varying difficulty. That's inherent to a test. You have to have items of varying difficulty because of different ability levels.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, good morning. I'm a business owner, father of 3, and a school board member, and proud to be on this council. You know, when I listen through everything that we have heard, and one of the things I heard is, where we're going with assessment and instruction is through technology. I think our business partners are already there, so it's incumbent on us as we educate children to get them there, and that comes with some bumps in the roads, I know, with computers and technology, and it's a challenge. I looked at one of the pages we got early on, which was the Common Core State Standards implementation timeline for Arkansas public schools, going back to 2010, when we first began to learn about this. So I'm in a community with 22,000 students, 67% of them are in poverty. In 2010, we knew this was coming. So, over that 5 years, even in an impoverished school district, it was a challenge, but okay, we've got to get bandwidth. We've got to get technology in kids' hands. And so, my thought is, I don't want us to get too discouraged from the technology along the way. I think it is certainly something that is important. And while it comes with its bumps in the road, just like everything else we deal with, whether it's with our own email account or with our, the vendors I do business with, I get frustrated when they roll out some new technology too. So I certainly hope we keep going down the pathway of exploring that. And again, back in Springdale, where there's a high number of impoverished kids, there's a high number of English language learners, does the PARCC test look different for an English language learner than it does for everybody else? I know we've talked some about special ed, but does it look different for an English language learner? Is it just the same?
No, it doesn't. There's no English language learner specific version. It's the ELA and math that all students would take. And then it's a district decision about whether a student it's appropriate for a student to take that test given how long he or she has been in the country or learning the language, et cetera. Those are local policies.
Okay. And did I understand correctly that the PARCC test that a student takes in Arkansas is the same test that a student might take in any of these other 11 states that are part of the consortium?
Exactly.
Okay.
11 states in the District of Columbia,
Okay.
as well as the Archdiocese and the Bureau of Indian Education are participating in PARCC this year, and they'll all take the same test. Now, with any test, a large-scale test, they're different forms that are all equated, but they're the same items, the same test, so that there's comparability on the back end, so that you can compare students both within Arkansas and across the consortium.
Okay. As far as adjustments or flexibility within the assessment, okay, it sounds like you've got some meetings coming up next week. I mean, how quickly can you react and respond to, I've heard some conversations about the surveys that some of the students took. Will we see that next year? I mean, can it happen that quick?
Absolutely, and I'll be very clear. I think there'll be decisions made about next year's test and the windows by the end of the month, and we'll get that information to you. But beyond that, how do we use the data from the surveys that we've taken is to do ongoing improvements to the platform so that will be ready by next year, and the administration guidelines and the administration, there's a book literally of how the administration goes. That can be changed quite nimbly and will be changed in time for the fall administration.
Okay. I think that you indicated the ACT Aspire is a 4.5-hour test. Is that?
Depending on grade level, but
okay.
Average, yes.
Okay. So how long was the PARCC test this year, or is it again depending on grade level?
It does depend on grade level. The PARCC reading and writing and mathematics test in the early grades is about 7 hours, and by the end of high school is about 9 hours. Now, what we learned, actually it was very interesting being in a classroom last week, in an 8th grade classroom. This is anecdotal, and there are about 22 kids in the classroom, and I'd say 90% of them finished well with lots of time to spare. And it's one of the things that the states really were looking at this year. Coming into this year, states have very different policies on time. Some states allowed untimed tests, literally allowed a kid to sit there all day. Some states had very strict, what are called paced tests, where you've got to be done, you're speeded, you're done and you're done, and the test is taken away. PARCC came out somewhere in the middle. There are testing times, and then you can get 50% overtime for students who need it, but even within the administration time, they're very generous allotments of time, because you want kids to be able to show what they can do, and none of the state leaders wanted any kid to say, I didn't have enough time to show what I could do. That is not what the PARCC belief system is. It's equity and access. So we scheduled it quite generously. One of the most important things we're going to look at is the data about how long did it actually take kids to do the test. Could you, without constraining opportunity for kids, could you actually shorten the amount of time allocated in the testing session and still allow the majority of them to finish?
Okay. I'll just add in closing, I mean, with the fear of coming up on PARCC and it's a new deal, as a parent, as a school board member, everything that we were worried about, it went pretty smoothly. I mean, I think there were certainly some bumps in the road, and those things will work out in time, and we expect that from you and from the testing vendor, but I think we breathed a sigh of relief too, that bandwidth was okay, the computer problems we had to work through a little bit, but that could have been a lot more challenging than it was. So.
Good, thanks for the feedback. And my job is sort of chief problem solver, and I help support states and the state departments of ed and districts in solving their tricky problems. So one of the things I'm very interested to look at is the information we gleaned from this first administration to say, how can we do it better?
Okay, my question is for Dr. Mueller. I think that PARCC and ACT Aspire had an opportunity to answer the question I've got. It may be hard for you to answer because I know you said y'all's tests are unique to each state that you work with, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So it would be, I mean, could you answer if I asked just approximately how long do those tests take for y'all?
It is fully dependent upon the design. That is an agreement between the Department of Education and us. So I can't.
Varies from state to state.
It varies.
That's
Yep.
what I thought. What about getting the results back to schools? Because I know I'm an elementary principal, and we want our results back fast. We'd like to have them back the next day.
Yep.
I know that's impossible, but
it's waiting for a gift to open.
But
so what happens is it depends on the types of items that are in the assessment. If they're machine score, that is, you can do it with artificial intelligence kinds of mechanisms, then you can get them back the next day. You can get them back that right away. It's all based upon the design of the assessment. If you have to create something that is sent away for hand scoring, so you have professional scorers, then it does take longer because, it has to go by mail. So it's shipped there, they do what they need to do, then you get results back. And that can range. There are some clients that we have that get on a 24-hour turnaround cycle. Other states, like Arkansas, have not been on a 24-hour turnaround cycle. It's been a much longer process because there's some statistical stuff that we do at the end that it has taken some time as well. That doesn't have to be the case. It's just the way the design has been in the past.
okay. And I guess the other question would be for the other two of you, and you may be doing it, and I just am not aware of it, but I know when the benchmark first came out, Questar would have teachers come to Little Rock and talked a lot about the test, and we learned a lot of what was expected from those training sessions. Do y'all do that?
We do. We actually have a number of training modules. We have on the ground, we have online, we have webinar. There's a variety of opportunities for us to interact with your teachers and those who are interacting with students to deliver the test.
PARCC does that as well in a myriad of ways. We met with district superintendents last week. We have numerous teachers and educators involved in item review. So every item has actually been developed. And then over the summer, there'll be something like 600 teachers coming together in July to go deep on what worked well, how can we improve, and what does that mean for next year.
These trainings I'm talking about, the best I can remember, and it's been several years ago, is we were told a lot about like how the writing responses were answered, and it helped us, I thought.
I didn't understand the question. Yes, we do that.
Yeah.
And there are a variety of different ways to get teachers engaged in that. And we can talk further about that if you're interested.
Okay. That's all.
Okay, I have about one question for each of you. Dr. Mueller, so your tests are state-specific, right?
That's correct.
Just like we talked about. Now, how do you compare, do you compare those nationwide at all or anything like that?
Yeah, there are some statistical ways of creating some measures of comparison outside of the assessment itself, and that's what we've been working on. We've actually created some comparison work for some other states that we're working with and have discussed a little bit with the ADE so far. So it's totally doable. It's a psychometric kind of thing, but yes.
And then your tests are created from the standards, right? Correct?
Correct.
So ideally, if we all have the same standards or the same general standards, then eventually all your tests would mirror about the same, right?
In theory, that's correct. It's all defining that purpose at the end of the day, like I talked about earlier, and then building to there. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. And then, Mr. Montgomery, there's only 2 states that use Aspire right now, but then just about every single state uses ACT in the end, right?
Correct. There are 21 states who actually use the ACT statewide. Nationwide, 1.8 million students took the ACT last year, which is about 57% of the graduating class.
Okay. And then is there like a package, because I know like you have to pay for the ACT privately if you want to take it for your college admissions. Is there a package where you would discount that for the students if your state adopts the Aspire and the whole?
So when we do a statewide adoption of the ACT, there is a statewide adoption price point. I don't work in that particular area, but yeah, we actually do work with states, and depending on if they add writing, which is an additional component because it becomes a scorable, hand-scorable piece for the ACT, then that bumps the cost a little bit. But yeah, we actually have a state model for pricing of the ACT.
Okay, and now, correct me if I'm wrong, now Alabama and South Carolina are the only 2 states that have that full.
They're the only ones that have the full
Yes.
3 through 8, 3 through 10 with ACT Aspire, and then ACT at the 11th grade. Wisconsin is doing grades 8 and 10 in ACT Aspire this year, and they actually have an RFP out for a variety of other 3 through 7 assessments.
And then if you adopt the 3 through 8, or 3 through, if you adopt the Aspire, then do you kind of get rid of the Plan and the Explore part?
So Plan and Explore actually are being sunsetted by us with the idea that current state and district users who are using ACT, Explore, and Plan would migrate, and a vast majority of them have, to ACT Aspire at 8 and 10.
Do you have any idea how long it'll be, or how many states in the future will adopt that whole package deal, or the? So like we could, like once again, we want to compare ourselves to the whole nation. So
I don't have an estimate of how many. I'd love to say as many as possible.
Yeah, 90, all 50, of course. Yeah.
But we don't have a number or a target in mind.
Yeah.
But there are a number of states we're engaged with and having conversations, and a number of states that are doing very similar panels as this, right? That are also looking at what the future of their own statewide assessment systems might look like.
Yeah, because I was reading it up. South Carolina's kind of like literally just a few months ago went through this whole thing that we've done, and they made their own standards and adopted the Aspire part. And then, Ms. Slover, my next, I guess, kind of just to clear up for the panel, the PARCC, what you're wanting to use PARCC for, since I just went into college, PARCC is going to be used to kind of like people could clip out of classes, right? Is that how you're going to use PARCC? So like, let's say you score 21 on the ACT, well then you don't like you can. You don't have to go through English remediation whenever you go to college, or like 21 on the. They're actually raising it all up now too for college algebra. Like you don't have to take college algebra, or not pre-courses for college algebra. Let me rephrase that. Is that how you're going to? Is that how PARCC's going to be used? Because you said it wasn't going to be the admissions test, right? Or eventually maybe.
It was envisioned as a tool that essentially a ticket to entry, that a student who did everything right in high school and did well on PARCC would not have to take a remedial course, but more importantly, not have to take a placement test.
Okay, yeah.
When they got to campus. Because a lot of what we have found is that kids in many states, Arkansas, but other states, are showing up on campus not prepared to take credit-bearing courses. And what they're saying is, wow, I took all the required courses in states where they are required. I took and passed my exit exam, and I took an admissions test, and I got in to college. So how could it be that I'm not ready to take credit-bearing courses, and I have to pay to take remedial courses? And the data show that kids who take remedial courses are far less likely to graduate. So it's costing them money, but it's really costing them their dream. So what we've done is create a system that has credibility in high schools, because it measures the content that matters to teachers, and that has proven to be what it takes to get into a credit-bearing course and be successful in that course. So if I'm a kid and I get a 4 on my PARCC exam, that means I can go to any college where I've been admitted and say, hey, I'm ready to go directly into a credit-bearing course. I don't need to take that remedial course, and I don't need to take a placement course because, see, I have this score. And you, Institution X, Southern Arkansas University, have said you'll accept that.
Okay, that's exactly my point. And then also, going back with that, can you use that while you're still in high school for concurrent credit? Because I know, like for me personally, to take classes where I was from through ASU, Arkansas State, you had to have at least a 19 or 21 on the ACT to take college algebra. Could you use that? Could you use your PARCC score from the previous year for that if Arkansas State decides to accept PARCC?
That's the goal.
Okay.
The goal is to create a lot more flexibility for students because they have this credential. So they could be doing early college, they could be literally going to the college campus and taking courses, or they could, high schools, there's new models of high schools where they're actually offering college courses on campus. But yes, that's the goal, is that kids who are accelerated don't have to wait. They can enroll directly in credit-bearing courses.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
That would help. I'm Calvin Trice. A non-educator, but I'm a parent of a young lady. Question for Mr. Montgomery. As I understand, 50 years of ACT, and read something from U.S. News and World Report. It says, despite entering high school at tops of their class, many high-performing minority and disadvantaged students finish with lower grades, lower AP exam passage rates, lower SATs and ACT scores than their high-achieving white and more advantaged peers. What have ACT done over the last 50 years to stem that, since this is supposedly based on a recent study by the Education Trust?
So what has ACT done? Our research would bear out the same statistics that you just cited. And I think one of the things that led us to be a part of the Common Core discussion early on, back in 2008, when CCSSO and the National Governors Association came together, is we weren't seeing the level of readiness by all students, but especially underserved students, as they prepared for college. And the data continue to bear that out. I think one of the goals that we all envisioned, and I'm going to make a jump here, and I hope Laura doesn't mind, but we had previous lives where we actually worked for other institutions who were part of that development. I worked for CCSSO and she worked for Achieve. Part of the goal of developing those standards in the first place was to make sure that all students, received the type of education and were held to the standards that would actually allow them to go into college in credit-bearing courses without remediation. That's been ACT's definition of why we exist since the beginning. It's also the definition of the Common Core. I think, Mr. Luttrell, you said something about in 2010 we knew these standards were coming and we ramped up our technology. I think one of the things we haven't done in this country, not just probably here in Arkansas, but across the country, is that we haven't spent a lot of time realigning our own curriculum, our teacher professional development, our schools of education, in order to be able to deliver high-quality curriculum and standards that allow students, all students, to be ready for post-secondary success. And that's a travesty from an equity perspective that all of us probably share, and we need to do more about.
Part though, we have two students starting the same point, same cognitive level. Study that I'm aware of talks about is the questions, the difference in questions, and difference in where one student is versus another is a basis of some of the disparity between the scores also. So what have you all done in that regard?
So all of our assessments, and I would imagine every assessment company does this, I won't speak for my colleagues here, all of our items go through a bias and sensitivity review so that we're not asking students who live in southern Arizona questions about igloos that only students in Alaska might know about. I'm making that up off the top of my head, but we try to go through that bias and sensitivity of the items that we provide on all of our tests so that we aren't prejudicing students who have more affluent or more opportunities to learn those things than other students. And so we've tried to be very careful about the way that the items are written.
But the scores are still
yeah. So we can only
showing that it's working.
Well, and so I would say it's not just ACT, right? Any assessment would show you the same thing. I mean, I think we have a fundamental problem in the way that we educate our students, especially students who are underserved in inner cities. I worked for 6 years in an inner city school district where we had those same issues. It's very difficult at the curriculum and instruction in the classroom level. We have to change our system there, and we can assess where students are relative to those standards, but there has to be a fundamental shift in the way we actually educate our kids in the classroom.
Okay, so PARCC has been at it for about 3 years doing the testing part.
This is the first year of live administration. Last year was the field testing year.
Okay, so what have you all done knowing that there are issues with disparity in testing for socioeconomic, race, all that? What have you done to ensure your testing doesn't follow the same pattern?
Let me tell you about a few things that we've done. From the outset, as I mentioned, one of our driving purposes is around equity and the equity agenda of getting all kids ready for college and careers. So that meant all kids, and knowing that there's a challenge making sure there's no bias in assessments. We also convened a bias and sensitivity review structure so that every item goes through and made sure that it's not just the question of is it sensitive to different cultures in different areas, but is there a bias inherent in the item? And if so, we either revise the item or throw it out. Next, we convened a panel called the Accessibility, Accommodations, and Fairness Committee with representation from the National Urban League and other constituents who care deeply about this issue. They are an advisory committee, and their goal was to help us see our blind spots, because we're not in a perfect world, and we are building, the states were building a program. So what are the blind spots? What are the things that we haven't done well in the past, as in the country with assessment, and how can we get out in front of them? And then the other thing we've done is have educators from every state with the goal of diversity in terms of participation and district and demographic participation, review items. We can do better in that regard, and we need to. And one of the things that I've been personally working on in the last 6 to 12 months is building relationships with the civil rights community. In fact, I'm flying back this evening to attend a dinner the NAACP and the National Urban League are putting on with the goal of thinking about equity in education, making sure that people of color are represented on groups, making sure that we're speaking to communities about not just the technical side, but what it means for their kids and how it's going to provide a hand up and not just be a hammer. The civil rights community has come out recently loudly in favor of the Common Core, and loudly in favor of annual assessment. And you probably saw a statement that was released, I think it was just last week, supporting the new rules around ESEA reauthorization, around holding a line on annual assessment, because it's so important to provide information back to families about how kids are doing and whether they have equal opportunities. That said, that information that comes back from assessments needs to be free and free of bias, and make sure that all learners are reflected in that. And I think we've worked hard to that end, and we can always do better.
I have additional questions when we do the follow-up.
Take whatever you tell me.
Good morning. I've got five questions.
I'm going to wait. I want to come back.
My name is Luke Vandewalle. I'm a parent, former teacher, former principal, and now I'm an administrator at a charter school network. And to me, the biggest thing is a rigorous test. The last time I taught 8th grade math, 97% of the students passed the state test. And then we did the Explore test in 8th grade, and fewer than half scored on a college-ready level. That same group of students took when they became 12th graders and took the ACT as 11th and 12th graders, fewer than half were scoring college ready. And to me, what's critical is that we're honest with our kids and our parents about how ready for college they actually are. And whether it's PARCC, whether it's ACT, it needs to be a rigorous assessment that is honest with our kids and parents in that way. My first question, Ms. Slover, why PARCC and not the ACT Aspire? If, it sounds like a lot of the goals for PARCC are things that are somewhat already in place for ACT with the value that colleges place on them, the comparability across states, and the level of rigor.
Thanks for the question, and congratulations for all the work that you've done. That kept impressive. So that's a great question, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to answer that. I would flip it around a little bit and say, why would you do anything other than PARCC in Arkansas, where Arkansas leaders have been at the table making decisions, Arkansas teachers have reviewed items, Arkansas will own its own student data, and Arkansas colleges and universities will be accepting the use of those scores. So why would you, with the opportunity to use a homegrown, excellent product that will have comparability with 11 other states and jurisdictions and growing, why would you do anything different? I wouldn't.
And then my next question for you is, what should have Arkansas done differently, or what will Arkansas do? And I'm thinking of an analogy if we're at a restaurant and there's really a great chef that's creating really great food, but the server isn't very nice, doesn't bring it out on time, it's overcharged, and it takes a really long time to get the bill when you're done. Ultimately, that's not going to reflect well on the chef and the great food the chef made. How is PARCC addressing all the other things that affect the implementation of the assessment?
Well, I think, the business of education is a learning endeavor, and we are constantly learning and seeking to learn more about how to do things better. We are in the middle of, we're not quite done, we have had a very successful first year with administering an assessment through a new program with 5 million kids. It's pretty amazing if you think about building a program from scratch, field testing it, administering it, and doing it as well as PARCC states have been able to do it. That is not to say, and I think it's important to be clear, that there have been issues. Many of those were first-time issues that have been resolved. We heard that from several people in the room. Some of those are, ongoing problems that need to be fixed. But someone recently likened this program, or any new program really, to building a road. You know how the first time they come through, they grade it and they put the pre-road down, then they put the first surface down, and then the second year the third pass they put the nice smooth surface on, and they draw the lines. So I'd say we're in the second year. We did the gravel and the grading last year with the field test. We worked out a lot of the kinks. We went live this year with a product that is very strong, and next year it will be even more smooth. And we hope to grow the program because people are watching and people are seeing how well it went. And there are states who are very interested in joining with some of the top performers and some of the strivers to deliver the best program.
Thank you. My next two questions are for you, Mr. Montgomery. We did the Aspire test last year in our schools, piloting it, and again, very committed to rigorous assessments. Yet as an administrator, I'm bounced back and forth because right now Arkansas is doing PARCC, and we'll do it next year also. So the transitioning the back and forth, yet ultimately I want our kids to do really well on the ACT because that's what colleges care about. What's your recommendation for Arkansas if we want to improve ACT scores? What would Arkansas do?
So I appreciate the question, and I think you started by saying that in your school, I think 97% of the kids passed the 8th grade state achievement test, but only 50% of the students passed Explore. I think that's a phenomenon we see. It's the reason why the Common Core began in the first place, is because we saw that standards and the assessment of those standards weren't uniform across this country. And I think one of the things that we've even seen, and you identified it in the example you gave, is that when students are exposed to a college-ready curriculum and a college-ready assessment, they typically aren't doing what the state thinks they should be doing based upon their former state assessments. To the point around, what does ACT measure and what should we be doing? We built ACT Aspire based on the data and the research that we've had for over 50 years. That data and research has led us to believe that if we domain sample the constructs of college and career readiness across the grade levels, so numbers and functions, base 10 in math, you name the functions, we don't measure every single standard in the Common Core. We measure those that are most critical to student success in the next grade. And so to the extent, people like to talk about alignment all the time, if anybody's question is, do we align to the Common Core? If that means, do we align item to standard, the answer to that's no. We measure the most critical components of what students need to know and be able to do to move on to the next grade, be successful and on track for college readiness, and on track, hopefully, towards being ready to take the ACT and enter into college without taking remedial courses in their entry-level classes. So if you're asking me for a recommendation, I believe that's up to you all to make that decision, but we believe ACT Aspire can measure the content of your standards. We believe we can measure the college readiness of your standards and the trajectory of students towards those standards as well or better than anybody.
And then one more question for you. Previously, you were at the CCS Council of Chief State School Officers. We heard from our former commissioner that he worked with them to help develop the Common Core standards.
I talked to Ken last night.
So I'm wondering, given your involvement then, why did that group create the PARCC organization or enlist? Why did it go with PARCC rather than ACT? And I don't know that that's a fair question, but
well, so yeah, the history is multifold, right? In your question, the Council of Chief State School Officers and the National Governors Association came together in 2008 for two different reasons. One, we saw across the country at CCSSO that across the country, standards weren't uniform. We were really playing games with the way we reported student success. 97% of your kids are proficient. We knew that wasn't the case. The chiefs knew that wasn't the case, and they were tired of being compared apples to oranges. Our assessment tells us 97% of the kids are ready. Ours tells us 85% are ready. They were having trouble, reconciling that. Many of them also said it's no longer, from an equity perspective, right for us to practice what we were calling zip code accountability, that what was right in Massachusetts for kids to know and be able to do ought to be the same as what it was in Mississippi or Montana or any place else. And so that was the reason the chiefs came about that. The governors came then from perspective of, we're losing jobs overseas, and we need a more educated, better workforce who can go into those jobs and be ready. The council and NGA worked with ACT, Achieve, and the College Board to create those first initial college readiness standards, and from then they were back mapped across K to 12. That's where CCSSO and NGA's Common Core State Standards Initiative ended. From that, the federal government incentivized states through Race to the Top to create a number of assessment consortiums, of which PARCC and Smarter Balance were developed to create those tests of those new standards. So if your question is why didn't CCSSO and NGA go with ACT or College Board or some other specialized Pearson test, the chiefs and the governors never wanted to get into the assessment game. They were only there to facilitate the states creating the standards, and from that they believed that the assessment would take care of itself, and obviously here we are.
Got it.
I'd love to add a little flavor to that. And Scott and I do go way back. We were part of the original Common Core writing teams and helped shepherd that process through, which was After PARCC, the most exhilarating professional experience I've ever had. Just to be part of that incredible energy with the goal of equity and making sure all kids, I like your term, are not being subjected to a zip code-based accountability system, but really a system that believes in that what you know matters, and that everybody should have access to knowing that. One of the reasons that states decided, and I was part of the discussions early on, they decided that if we're going to have new content standards, we need new tests. The tests we've got aren't cutting it. They're not going to measure these new standards. They're not going to put kids on a path to success. And if what we really want is success for kids, we need to build tests. Why? Not because tests are some panacea and some end-all be-all, but because what gets measured gets taught. And so it matters what our measurement looks like. If we really want the standards to be implemented, we've got to have measures that reflect them. Because if we just do the same old assessment, people are going to ignore the beautiful standards and just teach what's on the test. So the PARCC states have a value about measuring the entire range of the standards. And that is different. That's a different philosophy. And from that, everything evolves. So if coverage matters and you don't want to narrow the curriculum, you measure all the standards. It means that, and when we wrote the standards, remember, we were already building off the mantra of fewer, clearer, higher. We looked at all the standards that states were currently using in 2008, 2009, and said, we don't want to do that because there's way too much to be covered in a year. We don't want to do that because it just repeats itself from year to year. And we don't want to do that because the standards are too low and they're not meaningful and they don't provide on-ramps for kids. So we decided to create a better set of standards that was rigorous but focused. And so as states thought about what that meant to assess it, they wanted to assess it all. They wanted to assess it and send the clear message to teachers, to parents, and to schools that everything in the standards matters. And so when you build an assessment around that premise, you cover all the content. You may not cover it all as much because there are areas to emphasize, but it means that you're not just going to sample the content, you're going to cover it, and that's one of the guiding philosophies of the consortium.
I've got more, but I know I've gone way over.
I think the Lieutenant Governor puts me at the end, so he kind of keep me, everybody gets my questions, so I only get like 5 minutes. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. My name is Jason. My name is Jason Williamson. I, too, am a parent and an educator. I'm assistant principal at Nashville Junior High in Nashville, Arkansas. By the way, thank the council for all the prayers and reaching out for our previous deal with the tornado. Really meant a lot. A lot of good stuff happened in Nashville, Arkansas. My first question is focus and coherence and rigor is what Dr. Jones told us on the first day that the Common Core Standards was all about. And so my question to you is, what difference does it make that ACT does not align necessarily to the standards if their exam aligns to focus, coherence, and rigor?
Well, I think the question really is how does PARCC align to the Arkansas standards? And how does it focus with laser-like focus on what's most important to Arkansans, which are in your standards? So the philosophy and the way that the assessment was built was to measure with great fidelity the standards. And so we take all our cues from that. All of the areas of emphasis are directly from the standards. And that matters because that's what teachers look to. And we're going to release 40% of the items, and they'll be out there, and they'll be showing very publicly what is measured and and then schools and educators are going to have conversations about, well, what does that mean for our curriculum? What does that mean for our teacher professional development? Are we focused on the right things? But that all starts with the standards, and we believe that you got to measure all the standards if you want teachers to teach all of them.
Yeah, so I think fidelity to the standards is important. I think Laura made a comment that there are some things worth emphasizing. And I think it is a philosophy, and it's a different philosophy. We believe that in the domain of the standards, whether that's, in fourth grade geometric principles or 8th grade algebraic equations, we believe that in sampling the domain of that, we can get to the critical mass of those standards that are most important to show student success in the next grade and keep them on trajectory for post-secondary success. Does that mean we sample every single, or assess every single standard in every single domain of the Common Core? No. We didn't build it to the Common Core. We actually had Aspire on the development table and being developed before the Common Core was completed. So we didn't have that luxury, but we do know what constitutes college and career readiness. We have internally benchmarked and looked at where we have alignment and coverage and feel pretty strongly that if you measure if your standards are the Common Core or some college and career readiness set of standards in your state, whether that's the Common Core or something else that you've developed, we can measure the content of your college and career readiness pretty strongly. We've got the data and the research and the history to be able to do that. And if your intent is to ensure that your students meet the goal of being ready for college or any post-secondary training, whether that's a 2-year technical school or a certificate program or anything else, we believe that we can measure that using our system, and we're doing that in a number of other states.
This question is for you, Mr. Montgomery. Data privacy is really huge here. Earlier in Ms. Slover's explanation, she talked about Arkansas having the rights to keep their own data and so forth and so on. Who would have sole possession of the data from ACT if we went with ACT?
So sole possession of the data is,
well,
you get your data back.
That's what I want to know.
Okay, so every year, and just to give you an example, every year in the states where we do statewide ACT assessment, we provide the state back a data file that's their data. We have data sharing agreements with the states because they then share that data back with us, so that we can do the longitudinal research and a whole host of other things that is needed with that data. But we provide you the data file, it's your data, and you're absolutely correct. At last count, I think there were 130 bills in 49 states around student data privacy. We deal with that every single day, because in order for us to continue to build the assessments, in order to continue to validate our assessments, we need access to that data too. And so there are some significant issues and challenges. We value the privacy of the data that we collect on students, and we have pretty rigorous, I would love to tell you all the encryption and all the other kind of things, but I would screw that up and somebody would call on my phone in a second. We do all that, and we value the privacy of your students' data, and we work with you to make sure that that data is secure and that you have access to all that data.
Ms. Slover, what I'd like to know is, and you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but with your Pioneer program, your goal is to try to get as many colleges in the state of Arkansas to sign on to PARCC, to accept that for not placement. Am I correct? It's not placement?
What the PARCC Pioneers program is about is having institutions step forward and say, we'll accept the score that shows that you've mastered the content in high school and are ready to enter and to succeed in a post-secondary credit-bearing course.
So it opens doors.
It is a door opener.
But it doesn't unlock scholarship, entrance, or actual class placement.
Not at this time, but we are working toward that end actually quite rapidly, and in a few different ways, and focusing right now on underserved communities and first-time college goers. That is our goal in the next couple of years. But at the moment, no, but that's a very important goal for us.
Well, how do I justify to a high school senior or junior that they should buy into taking the PARCC exam when for them, what's most important is getting accepted to college? How do I reconcile that for a high school senior?
Well, I don't want to be quoted on this statistic, but I think about 50-ish% of kids in Arkansas show up as a first-time freshman and are not ready to go directly into credit-bearing courses. So I think the conversation and the truth-telling has to start with kids about the fact that they may be, and this is not just in Arkansas, it's in too many places, that kids go through their whole K-12 career. They take the courses they're asked to take. They take the exams they're asked to take. They pass them. They do well. They get signals from the grown-ups in their life that they're ready, and then they show up and they're not ready. So the value of Common Core and the value of a PARCC assessment system, it's going to give information back very transparently to kids and families about where they are in their path to readiness. Now, for some, that's going to show you're ready early and it's a huge door opener, and isn't that great, there are all these opportunities. And it's going to happen for a lot of kids. Because, by the way, the assessment isn't it's a criterion reference test. It's not a norm reference test. So it basically means anybody, all of us, if we've learned our content, can get a 4 or 5. We can all do well. It's not a norm reference where you got to have people equally distributed across the scale score. So that's the good news. On the not so good news side is that it's going to tell the truth, and a lot of kids aren't going to be ready. And it's going to be a hard conversation to have with those kids and their families, because they're going to be worried that it's a door closer. But it's incumbent upon us and the institutions that are lining up to start accepting these kids to say, it's not a door closer. It's an opportunity to do more earlier so that when you get here, it's not too late. So that's the value, is that it's a clear-eyed view earlier in the game about what a kid really needs to do to be ready when they graduate from high school.
I got it. I'm good. Okay. Mr. Montgomery, the way PARCC currently works for us at the building level is we cache the exams, meaning we take it off the server and put it on our server, and we put all the information in to create the tickets for the kids, and then we unlock the test on day of. How does that look for ACT at my building level?
Yeah, very similar. We mentioned Pearson is our provider as well.
Okay,
We're using a very similar platform, so it would look very similar in your school in the way that you're currently measuring your students.
Okay. All right, Ms. Slover, the cost, and this is my last one. Earlier we talked about cost, and you said that once you got kids up to 7 million, that the cost would be about $18 a kid. Is that?
Yes. I have to go back and look at the actual pricing threshold chart, but it's around $18.50, I believe. I'd like to get that to you so I'm not misunderstood.
But you told us also that you're currently only testing about 5 million?
There are 5 million kids.
So we're 2 million away from being at about $18.50?
That's right.
So what are we at currently now?
Again, I'd like to go back and look at that data, because it's also challenging because every state could be a little bit different, because every state has made its own decisions about how many kids are going to go online versus how many kids are going to do pencil and paper. So, and I'm not the Department of Ed has the specifics about what its decisions are, but why don't I get back to you on the overall general thresholds, and then I can work with the department to get you the information about Arkansas's specific costs.
I'll stop now. I could ask questions all day. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you. We will open it up now. We're doing great. We're doing awesome. We've got until 11:30, which looks like about 45 minutes. I get a lot of text.
Lieutenant Governor, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Could we maybe take a 5-minute
Sure,
for
absolutely.
point of personal privilege?
Not here.
I think there's.
We're pretty high speed, low drag, as we say in the Army. Get up whenever you want. Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute break. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to get going again. We're going to get going here so we don't eat up all our extra question time, because I know I'm going to go back to Luke and Jason. Anybody else? You got an alibi? You got an ex? You want one? Okay. 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 Yeah, sale barn. Yeah. Okay. Okay, we're gonna get going again. As I was saying before we broke, yeah, if you need water or anything, just let us know. We got mints. I'm not gonna. Yeah. In any event, so as I sit here I know it is cold in here. I have no idea why. It's not my fault. It was actually colder when we started in this room. It was in the 30s. So as I sit here, I get a lot of text and emails from people on both sides of the debate. And sometimes I will ask the questions people give me, and people watching may think that I'm leaning a particular way because of that. A lot of times I'm just making sure things get on the record and make sure they get addressed. And so I've got a few things I just want to mention quickly, then I'm going to open it up to other folks. First of all, I just want to remind people, and we got a poll, a survey results when we first started in this room on the first day of hearings. This is Dr. Ritter. I think it was Sarah McKenzie's survey from the Office for Education Policy at the University of Arkansas. I expressed some concerns about the validity of some of the data because there were some contradictory answers. For example, there were some answers by teachers where they said they liked Common Core, and then there were some answers where they said they didn't think it was going to help their students. I thought some of that was contradictory. It puzzled me, and I didn't know. So I just say that for the record. But there was one question here about assessment. If I were in charge of assessment, I would. 22% said purchase another assessment. 24% give no assessment. 20% develop a new state assessment. 11% continue PARCC, and 23% return to Arkansas benchmark and end of course exams. Now, to be fair, this was taken when a lot of people were probably feeling the frustration of giving PARCC because of some of the things that we've mentioned here today. But that was a poll. Again, take it for what it's worth. Need to mention that. A couple other things I want to mention. One of the things that what we're really seeing here, and I think it just deserves mention, is the tension between our federalism, the federalism that we have in this country, our federalist system, versus the desire by many people for national unanimity. This is a tension that we have in so many areas. And you often hear arguments about ease or convenience. Wouldn't it be easier if every state just had the same this or that? Well, yes, but that's not our system. The founders were wise, in my view. They set up our system so that states could act independently. Yes, if you just had one rule for barber licenses and one rule for lawyers and one rule for doctors and one insurance commission in Washington, would it be simpler state to state? Yes, but it would be worse. It would be an inferior way of governing, in my view. So that's why we have these discussions, because we have power at the state level that makes it difficult sometimes, and I think that's a good thing, for people who want the same thing everywhere to occur. That's why we have this. Otherwise, you just have the federal government say, this is the standard, this is the test, this is the whatever. And it might be, there might be more simplicity with that, although if it involves Washington, probably not. And so I just wanted to observe that however you feel about it, that's what's going on. So a lot of the arguments about all states being the same and all don't necessarily appeal to someone who understands and likes our system. So I just wanted to put that out there, because we do hear a lot about, well, if we could just have every state do this and every state do that. And again, I'm not taking a side on that. I just wanted to observe that so that is mentioned. The other thing is, we talk a lot about Arkansans being involved in the drafting of a test. An observation. No one ever seemed to even bring that up with regard to the ACT or the SAT going to college. No one goes, well, I'm not taking the ACT. It's not an Arkansas drafted test. Or I'm not taking the SAT, even though, I'm trying to get into wherever, because Arkansans were not at the table. So an observation there. We mentioned the locality when it suits us, but the reason I took the ACT and the SAT back in 1980-something, I can't remember, but I took that because they were the gold standards. They were the gold standards, and I haven't heard a lot of people upset about the ACT as a college entrance benchmark, whether that's the technical term or not. I haven't heard a lot of complaints about that. Students protesting because there's no Arkansans writing and there may be, I don't know. So I just make that point as an observation, that the idea of Arkansans being at the table for a national or regional or whatever test is not necessarily historically something that we've been concerned about. But again, tension versus local involvement and more of a national test. And I want to, Mr. Montgomery, I want to, with regard to the ACT, I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. ACT Aspire it tests the skills that are reflected in the Common Core, but it is not aligned directly to it. It is broader, recognizing the complexity of curriculum and teaching across the country, separate and distinct from Common Core, right? It's a broader.
I think you're on the right track. Alignment's always a tricky word.
Let's not use it then.
Well, so
use another word.
We didn't build ACT Aspire to measure the individual standards of the Common Core. We were already measuring college and career. We feel that the overlap of the way we measure college and career grade by grade has a fairly strong correlation to us being able to tell you if your students are mastering the Common Core or any set of college and career readiness standards.
Whether they're Common Core or not. Right. Okay. And so that goes to my next question, which I think you've answered. I just want to, again, this is something I want to get out, make sure it's on the record, because we're saving these video. And hopefully other states are going to watch some of these hearings, and so maybe they won't have to call y'all and get their questions answered. But so you're never going to consider aligning the way that we use that or building the college entrance ACT for Common Core. Obviously, if you're not doing that with Aspire, you wouldn't be doing that with your college entrance exam.
It's not our intent, right? And part of that reason is our data tell us what is needed at each particular grade level and what's needed into post-secondary credit-bearing entry-level courses, so we follow that trajectory. At this particular point in time, you don't have a lot of data you don't have data back from PARCC or Smarter Balanced about the effectiveness of those standards and where students are relative to that. So I think until you have that data and have multi-years of that data to be able to understand how students are doing on those standards. We believe that what we've been doing is working and actually telling students that they're ready for post-secondary training.
Is your ACT college entrance exam, like the one that I took years ago, is that changed in a substantial way as a result of Common Core? Or are you just sort of on the same, are you basically just the same trajectory with that test?
It is not changed as a result of the Common Core. We have changed a number of things about the ACT in the last couple of years, one being reporting categories. We actually now, our categories mirror the same constructs that are in the Common Core. It's those subcategories of math and English and reading. So they mirror the same categories. We report on those same categories. And our benchmarks have changed based upon our own national curriculum survey that we do every 3 years with post-secondary instructors to understand what it is that they need to see in students. It's why the English benchmark went up a point and why the science benchmark went down, because we understand that those benchmarks change from time to time as student proficiency changes. So we've made some changes, but not as a direct result of the Common Core.
Two more quick questions. I was given this, it was suggested that I read this. And again, don't take this as my view or anything else, but I think it's something that we need to. I want to ask all three of you, and we'll ask the next panel too, how will your assessment work if this council decided to go a different direction, and I'm not saying it will, a different direction than Common Core, or made some tweaks to Common Core? I think I generally know the common sense answer, but I want to give each of you an opportunity to just quickly, if we can, because I don't want to be unfair. If you could just tell us, let's say that hypothetically, we either completely trashed Common Core, hypothetically, this is a hypothetical, or we know what the answer is if we kept it exactly as it is, okay? So hypothetically, if we trashed it and did something else, or if we tweaked it to whatever degree, can you discuss sort of quickly, well, you would do whatever you're going to do individually anyway, right?
Correct.
So that's not, you aren't testing aligned to it, so I think I know the answer to that. You're not going to go change it.
Can I give you my answer? Sure. Because this is actually, we actually have a paper coming out that uses this exact phrase. To the extent your state standards measure college and career readiness, Common Core, Arkansas, whatever you're going to call them, the Oklahoma PASS standards, Virginia standards of learning, to the extent they measure college and career readiness, we can measure that college and career readiness of your standards.
Okay. Ms. Slover?
Well, the state leaders decide what content the assessment measures, and if they decide to tweak their content individually or as a group, the assessment can follow. I would say that, some of them have already, and I can't remember which, so don't quiz me, but some states have already added some content to the Common Core, tweaked the Common Core. Many of the states have called it something different and added a little bit of content here and there, and what we're measuring is the agreed to content that is across all the states, which are the Arkansas content standards. And so I think, generally speaking, some of the states have already done what you're talking about, and it hasn't impacted what they're measuring because it's still the high priority skills that prepare kids for college and careers.
And if one state in PARCC changed their standards, and it sounds like some have a little bit or whatever, the test among the PARCC members has to be the same. It's the same test that they agree upon as part of the consortium. So the test would stay the same, I guess, unless the changes were really big. I mean, I guess it depends on what the changes are. Is that?
I think that's fair to say, Lieutenant Governor. It depends on what the changes are and the extent to which there are changes. Small changes on things that are not of high priority or highly emphasized may not make a difference, and it also depends on the grade level. I think there are some things that at high school would require greater changes than perhaps at the early grades. It really depends. I think there's always an opportunity for any state to add a component, to go deeper in a component. A couple states have talked about adding more performance assessment, adding more of particularly the writing, the research simulation, because they're just such good items, and they really put a premium on the reading and the writing together. But that has not happened yet, but it's been a topic of discussion. So how could I extend? Should I want to? There's also an opportunity. There's a mid-year assessment that is under development, but nobody has chosen to use at this point. And that may be a place where there's individual states that choose to use it or not, because there is that flexibility.
Yeah, so if there was a minor change, you may look at it, the consortium may look at it and say, this doesn't really impact the way we currently test. Let's leave the test as it is. Consortium agrees, yeah, that's right. Our standards will be a little bit different because Arkansas teachers want it a little different, but the PARCC test doesn't need to change on this particular point. That could be one hypothetical scenario. Another could be the change is so substantial that the Arkansas representatives, Johnny Key and others, make a run at the consortium and say, hey, we made these changes and we really need the test to reflect these changes. So they would have to then seek agreement from the other members for those changes or they wouldn't occur.
Right.
Right.
Hope Allen, who's here, and I believe is speaking to you later, is a representative to that group.
Right. And
they have the conversations about the content.
That's good. We'll get into it. One more
Okay, that's great.
One more question, and this is about the data. So my daughter's in second grade, and I just want to get this on the record, even though the data's next week. My daughter's with the companies here. My daughter's in second grade. She took the PARCC test, I don't know, March, whenever it was.
Actually, she took the Iowa.
Oh, she did? Okay.
First and second graders take the Iowa.
Okay. Okay.
Which is sort of an old reference, but we have been using those, that curriculum that gears it up to get them ready to take the PARCC in third grade.
Okay. So let's say she takes it next year. Just help me here for all the people watching and for the video. I think this is important to go through this conversation, and we've had some email exchange about it, Dr. Jones. Her data, her name with her score, right? Her identifiable data. You hear all this stuff on the internet, half of it's true, half of it's not true. Okay, let's cut through all that. Her data, okay, she takes it on a computer because you didn't get a waiver next year. And that data rests with, I guess it's resting with, when she puts enter, okay, it's resting. She's through with the test, she aced it. No, I'm just kidding. So that data is resting with PARCC, right? It's on your server? Whose server is that? I'm just trying to figure out what happens to the data so that everybody knows, and we've had this conversation once and for all. Her data, okay, so
here's what happens with when a kid presses complete. Think about what happens with a pencil and paper test. It gets put in a box and it gets shipped back to the assessment vendor who does the scoring and reports the scores and builds the score reports and sends them out. They either send them, so that's what happens with a pencil and paper.
Okay.
So the same thing will happen with an online form. The kid will press click, I'm done. It gets uploaded to the vendor who will do the scoring and the reporting. And then the scores will come back and be reported in the score reports, which I'll share copies of with you.
So it's uploaded to Pearson, right? Okay, it's uploaded to Pearson, they do their score, they send my daughter's name back with her score, right? Okay, so now that data is, what does Pearson do with it once they send the score back? They keep it, I assume? No.
Pearson shares, so the state education agency, and it may be a little bit different in each state, but typically checks it to make sure there are no mistakes. And
so AD's going to have my daughter's name with her score, And I'm just trying to, this could save us a whole hearing. I mean, this is so important.
Would you like them to come join?
No,
Okay.
but, okay, so it goes to ADE. They've got it. I don't know anybody.
I think what they do is they clean it, meaning they make sure that your daughter's actually connected to the correct school.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that's correct, okay? I'm assuming that's correct. And I don't know a lot of people worried about ADE having it. That hasn't been the controversy, right? So the question is, what ADE gives the score to the Forest Park, and we find out our score and all that. Okay, the question is the trail. That's what everybody's concerned about. Everybody's got their own reasons for being concerned. I haven't lost a lot of sleep over it, but this is something that needs to be aired out. So her data, Pearson had her data when they graded it. What did they do with that?
They gave it to ADE,
right,
put it in a file.
Did they keep it after they sent it to ADE?
Well, then
do they still have it saying, hey, well, look.
Well, you might have, their contract is very clear with ADE about what they do with the data. So they're contractually obligated to do with the data what ADE has hired them to do, which is to score it and report it. ADE cleans it. It goes through a data file to the district and to the school.
So whether Pearson still has my daughter and her score after it's been transferred to ADE is not something you know the answer to. Do you know the answer to that? So they do have it. They do keep it. Okay. Pearson has it.
For a period of time until, because many times people call back.
Sure. Okay. I mean.
And we will have to calculate a growth from that.
Right.
They cannot share that data with any other.
And they cannot share the data with her name with the federal government.
No, they cannot.
No.
They cannot, despite what we might read somewhere. And you've got an agreement that says that. And if that was not correct, you could be sued, right?
Yeah, federal law requires that. The park
Well, federal
governing board.
law they want the data. The question is not whether they want data. We know the federal government wants data. The question is, do they want identifiable
Right.
that they can tie to my daughter? And I think the answer is no.
No, at
And
no
if
point.
anybody, okay.
At no point does that data get shared with the federal
Right,
government.
okay,
And
all right.
Pearson may not share it with anybody.
Right.
Without the
or you could
express.
sue them, right.
Exactly, without the agreement and approval of ADE. So it is very tightly controlled
I'm
and
sure
managed.
some
Now,
people are going to say it's not, and
let
I
me-
welcome their input via the web, but this
let
is
me
something
point out who doesn't see that data. Me.
Right. Okay.
It doesn't come to me. It doesn't come to my staff.
I wouldn't worry
We
about
manage
you,
the
but-
process, but we do not see any of that individual student data.
Anything to add to that?
I would only add that we have a number of data privacy papers about how we collect, store, and share data with states who are, because if the state purchases ACT or ACT Aspire, you own that, it's yours. So we have a number of student data privacy and data privacy documents that I'm happy to share with you and the rest of the committee about how we treat that data and how it's stored and secured. But in answer to your question about your daughter's individually identifiable data, not
Yeah, I'm just laying a foundation for next week. Okay, so real quickly on the same point. So the federal government's interest in data, correct me if I'm wrong, the federal government's interest in data, they love some data, is knowing without names, knowing how a school is doing, how a state is doing, how far down do they go? The feds, are they interested? They're not getting student. Are they interested in district? State. They're not interested.
State level subgroups, subpopulation.
Okay, demographics and socio. Okay. All right. That. Right. So if anybody says that my daughter's name and score is being shared by Pearson with, Publishers Clearinghouse, then I have a cause of action in court. Okay.
And sir, just to be clear, even within the company, not everybody has access to the data.
Right.
When I get data to analyze it, I'm not getting student identifiable
Yeah,
information.
you don't
I'm
care
getting-
if it's Bob
I don't need to know
Smith
it.
or,
Yep.
Jenny, whatever?
That's correct.
Right,
Yep.
gotcha. Okay, I just wanted to have this, and I'm sure there will be people blowing up my phone as I sit here. But this is not, we will deal with this in depth next week. This is laying a foundation to deal with this once and for all, because there's a lot of inaccurate stuff. And if anybody, is there anything that anybody has here on this issue that contradicts what anybody has said that we need to get out? Okay, thank you. I'm done. Luke, you want to go back to Calvin?
Okay. Is 18 on the ACT college ready?
An 18 composite on the, we don't have a college-ready determinant on the composite. We have a college-ready benchmark for each of the content areas, 24 in math, 23 in English, 23 in science, 18 in, which one did I miss? But
My daughter always, I made 18 on the composite.
I think a lot of people think 21 is some kind of magic number on a composite, and generally I think, it might be, but, we don't have
She loves to say that she's smarter than me, but I always tell her I can outwork her from a learning standpoint. And what my question is from a component, from each individual level. I don't think I got over a 20 in any of the individual levels, but yet I went to college, and I did fairly well. When we talk about college readiness, I think we cut off the hopes of a lot of parents. And based on my previous questions about the inherent bias that research has shown that's there, again, my question is, how do you get past that? How do you get past this? Determinations are made based on scores, and as we're looking at PARCC, as we look at continuation of using these tests with ACT, SAT, and all the other scores, give us some confidence that there's something significant, that there's actual activities going on to address the issue.
So let me address your issue about the score, right? So the benchmark score at each individual level, whether it's math, reading, science, English, those benchmarks give us a better understanding of a student's predicted success in first-year credit-bearing, that's big key, credit-bearing college courses. If you get a 24 on the English section, 23 on the English section, which is the benchmark, you have a 75% chance of getting a C or better, and a 50% chance of getting a B or better. Actually, I said that backwards. We understand, and that's based upon the research that we have into first-year college credit-bearing courses that students take. So the benchmark means something, right? That if you meet the benchmark, we have a reasonable expectation that you're going to get a B or a C and move on in your college career. Because you get a 16 or an 18 or a score below the benchmark doesn't mean you can't succeed in college, doesn't mean that you won't succeed in college. It simply means that right now, based upon the research and the data and everyone else who's gone through the system and who's gone through post-secondary training and taken the ACT, our research suggests that you would be more ready to succeed in post-secondary if you got that benchmark score as opposed to you didn't. Doesn't mean you won't succeed, doesn't mean you can't. Simply means that you're not on track to go into a credit-bearing course. You might have to take a remedial course.
One of the things, probably 6-8 months ago, there was an article in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette talking about remediation at universities and talking about the remediation rate at different universities. And what I got from the article is that universities are moving away from remediation in many cases, because as you look at accountability of the state dollars that are being that universities are getting, that's going to even make it even harder for those students to get into college. So there's certainly, I see an issue. I see that it's related, that we have to really look at and making sure that there is no bias, that we reduce the bias associated with that.
Well, one thing that might help is just to be very, very clear about the purposes and the messaging around that. So the PARCC assessments are designed to measure content. They're not, they are, what they are is an indicator of the extent to which kids know the content and are ready to engage in credit-bearing courses in that content. They are not broader statements around readiness for a whole bunch of non-academic skills.
Isn't that
right?
the problem, though?
They do measure writing and they measure analysis, all of which are part of being successful in a college course. And I think over time you'll see that they can measure or they can give you a sense about grit and perseverance. But there are a whole other set of things, Mr. Trice, that you mentioned or alluded to about your college success that weren't predicted by your score. And I think that's an important thing for all of us to remember. We're talking about academic readiness, and we want to give kids opportunity but not close doors. We also want to acknowledge that kids come into their readiness not always on the same timeline, and that many kids flourish earlier or later, and that doors should not be closed.
What additional recommendations should this group give to the governor in regard to making sure that we reduce those impacts?
I would add one to the notion of as Laura said, these are academic standards. These are academic measurements that we're having. I think one of the things that I think you alluded to, or others might have, is that there are a whole host of non-cognitive issues that students need to have before they're ready to go on to college. Perseverance, grit, tenacity, all those things, right? Those are not measured on a paper and pencil or even a computer test. We have a number of those kind of assessment tools, but I think one of the things we need to start thinking about doing, in addition to our content and our standards, is thinking about those non-academic measures of readiness that we have to make sure kids are ready for. We all know that students who score 31 on the ACT and they go on to their first year of college and they rack up a lot of student debt and then they drop out after a year. Those kids may have been academically ready, but they weren't emotionally or socially ready, and there are a whole host of those non-cognitive, non-academic measures that we need to start thinking about, and thinking about how those impact students when they go on to post-secondary education.
Thank you.
Cindy?
The PARCC surveyed the students. Are they going to survey the teachers or the people that had to give the test? Because I have some that would like to be surveyed.
There is, so did you all see the lessons learned report from last year's field test, which surveyed the test administrators, the teachers, and the students? Have you all seen that? I'm going to make sure that comes to you as well. Now, those were the field test experiences, so they're different, but you can see what we learned and how we dealt with it, and what we, kind of the structure of the survey. We'd love to talk to those teachers, send them my way. We'd love to give them an opportunity to provide input.
I'll express one of the concerns, and we had a major problem with this, and it's not computer related, pretty much. That is the instruction manuals for the teachers. And I was not in testing this time because I was here. But the instruction manual for the teachers were on 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And you had to determine which grade, and they're under pressure, and they're trying to figure out which one to read. And we had a major problem because of that, because they read the wrong directions for the wrong grade. Can you not break those up with all the money that's going into this, into manuals for 6th, 7th, and 8th, instead of putting it all in one manual, because it was very confusing?
That's great feedback, and the answer is yes, we can do that. The states originally, this time last year, listened to the feedback about the manuals from the field test and made a lot of improvements and changes. The concerns we heard last year were too verbose, a little redundant, not clear what the difference is between high school and the lower grades. So they went into these grade spans. I think that they will now be taking a look at the ways to improve them even further and perhaps make them grade by grade. I'll bring that to the meeting next week, actually.
Thank you. And for y'all that don't know, because our teachers are put in there to give this, we get no prior reading of the manual. We're just like that. We're in there, we're in front of the kids, and we're trying to do it. And I believe when I had benchmark, we were giving our manuals in prior to the test to look at so that we did have some idea what was in it. And I don't know if that's, we can work around that, but it was very difficult to be put on the spot right then to read it when you had no prior time to look at it and make sure that you were in the right place on the right page and all that. So it was a problem for our teachers this time. Thank you.
We're going to go here, and then we'll go to you.
Does she have a follow-up?
Do you have a
follow-up? We did get to see we did have the manual. I got it like a couple of days before I actually delivered the PARCC test, but it was confusing. When it's not specific, there's just a blank there. So you don't know if it's 6th, 7th, or 8th grade. And I did get confused and had to, turn a page and realized I was on the wrong page. So that is something that's important.
Thanks, and if you're comfortable, I'll follow up with you offline and we can get specific about the manuals.
No, you can't.
I didn't want to take time. I was saying later. No, the problem was on the instructions on one page, it said grade 6 and 8, and the next page was grade 7. And so a teacher giving 7 kind of glanced and thought it was, 6 through 8. And so was that the same issue y'all had?
I love fixable problems. Done. We'll fix it. Yeah. Thank you for the feedback.
Okay. I have a question for each of you. What type of test is your test? And I think ACT has 2 of them, and you may have more than one. PARCC is criterion, right? Criterion?
Yes, it's a criterion referenced assessment.
Okay, is ACT the test to go into college? That's a norms test, or is that a?
We would say that it's criterion and normed.
It's a combination.
It has a number of, we have a set of standards that it measures to going into, and you can actually, there is no score distribution, right? Every kid can get a 36.
What about Aspire?
Aspire's the same way.
It's a combination.
And we create criterion referenced assessments with teachers involved in setting those cuts.
Okay. And am I right? You guys still do paper, and PARCC does all computer, or in other states do you do paper? Who decides how you do it?
Each state decides.
Each state decides
in
how
consultation
you
with
take
its districts what mode it's going to use.
So Arkansas Ed decided everybody in the state was going to do it on computer.
No, I think there are some districts, and I think you heard a couple
They got
represented
waivers,
here
but they only
that are
have
doing
one,
it
yeah, but they
pencil and
only
paper.
have, this is their last year, so that's fine.
And ours is the same. We would work in concert with you, and your districts would then tell us whether they had the capacity to do online.
Correct.
And, yep, so
Not just do it.
it's not a decision we make.
We got 1 minute. We're going to stay on time for lunch. Go ahead.
I would just make one comment about the testing manual. I did get the manual ahead of time for high school mathematics, a couple of weeks actually, so I had plenty of time to read it. But there was in the instructions, it said something about the testing the audio and such. Well, there's no audio in the high school mathematics test, so that was kind of useless information to be in the manual and kind of confusing to the kids. But my question is, could we get a demo of the ACT and the ACT Aspire, especially the Aspire, because
Sure, you can actually do that online yourself. If you go to, I think it's Discover ACT Aspire. I'll get you the exact link, but you can demo any number of online items. You can download the item exemplar book that actually gives you exemplars across the grade, as well as why the answers are what they would be. You can get all of that, and I can get you the exact link for that. But yes, you can do that on your own tomorrow.
Okay,
tonight.
and you mentioned formative assessments. That's something in addition to?
There is a formative and a interim, what we call it, there's a classroom and an interim component to ACT Aspire that's not part of the summative I mean, it is additional. Many districts are using that because they can.
Additional cost.
Additional cost, and many districts are using that because they do want to see where their students are at a regular interval in the classroom, and are they on track, and what can we do to change instructional practices to get them on track.
And I know you didn't ask me, but I'll just jump in that
Quickly.
PARCC has diagnostic and formative and speaking and listening assessments, this whole suite of tools. In this first year, and again, we'll share this information more broadly, hopefully by the end of the month. In this first year, we think those will be free to districts and schools. And then over time, we'll build a cost model that makes sense with the goal of driving down costs, but making things accessible. And there's a tension there. You got to pay for the upkeep, but you also want the price to be as low as possible so all districts have access, not just those who can afford it. So we're working on that as well. I'll get you information about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for coming. Appreciate your time. You should know that, and I don't, for what it's worth, over the last few weeks, we've had in the hundreds viewing this on live stream. Today, it's over 4,000, or right at 4,000. So testing is clearly of great interest to folks out there. But thank you. Appreciate it. And we will reconvene at 12:30.